Good afternoon. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the show. As Sue is getting ready and settled in here, she said, "We got anything new in the Savannah Guthrie case?" And I don't think we do. To answer your question, Sue, what was interesting is I shared this with Fred this morning, and I trusted the source. Sometimes you got to wonder about the source. KTLA, which is a television station in L.A., was reporting, I don't know if you heard this, that it was like the brother-in-law. So like Savannah's sister's husband was a suspect. Well, TMZ very quickly came out and said they're denying that. And then that's never been revisited the entire day, Fred, has it?
I think a couple people have been asked. Like the chief of detectives in Arizona was asked, is there a family member,
right?
He's not going to say,
well,
though,
again,
right?
he didn't say.
But I think my point is that the reporting on that has stopped because KTLA went out with that. I didn't see anyone else do it, and then I don't think there's been anyone else that is.
But they raided her sister's house today.
Yesterday or today?
I thought it was today.
Raided. That's
okay.
That's a strong word. I mean, I'm not denying that.
Okay,
but
hold on. They searched. They showed up. They did something. That's what I read. So either it's true and it's not supposed to be out and we're supposed to not be talking about it, or it's just completely false and somebody made that up.
So here's the Fred mentioned the chief of detectives.
That's strictly what we're all hearing here as well. It's important not to speculate. Because when you begin to speculate on who may or may not be involved, that doesn't help the investigation at all. We want to keep it focused, have the detectives follow credible leads that they have. So it's just some more information that's going out there. So they're looking into a number of things.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think we have any answers. I think they're still lost. They're confused. They're trying to figure out. And then to your point, Sue, like maybe there's information that they know that they're not sharing in order to, get closer to a suspect.
Right.
But boy, that thing just doesn't sound like it's going to end well. And then all this stuff about the ransom, that's kind of gone away a little bit too, right?
Yeah, the whole thing makes me wonder.
Yeah, it's a very, very sad and tragic situation. And what sucks for there's a lot of this that sucks for Savannah.
Yes.
It's her mother who might be dead, by the way, but they've already said she's not going to Milan, and she would have been a big part of the
broadcast for the
Olympic coverage, right? So this is a significant day, I guess we could say, in the world of quote, journalism, unquote. I have to put that in quotations because I don't really know what journalism is anymore. I went to journalism school. I was a news director and a reporter and an anchor, so I suppose I was a journalist for a good portion of my life. I consider journalism, like real journalism, relatively important, but this was coming for a long time, near really a couple of years. The warning signs were out there in the last couple of weeks. People knew that there were going to be big layoffs at the Washington Post, and they've cut like 30 to 40% of the staff today, including a lot of the foreign correspondents. There was a woman who was a reporter in Ukraine that was covering the war, and what they did is they held a big meeting today saying this is going to be a bad day for the Washington Post. They didn't take any questions, and then they said, I guess this is what big companies do. They said you're going to get an email notification to tell you if you're employed or you're not employed.
Oh my God!
So
sports department too, I think.
Oh yeah, so
brutal,
they got rid of the entire sports. It's brutal, but let's talk about this a little bit because we're going to put it into perspective a little bit better than I think it's been put in today. Because there's a lot of people whining about this, and
really?
I wish I was fired 20 years ago today. I wish Twitter was out there so I could have blamed someone for my firing as well. But the Washington Post is a piece of crap newspaper that Jeff Bezos came in, tried to rescue, and realized that he couldn't. And you have a bunch of these woke reporters out there all feeling like they're self-important. It's all about them, woe is me. People in the middle of the country, like real people where we are right now, they don't care. Now, I care a little bit because I don't like the fact that the New York Times is going to be the defining, not that it isn't already, but you at least have sometimes recently had more differences than you used to between the New York Times and the Washington Post on the editorial side in particular.
Competition is good.
Right. So I from that perspective, I understand, and I have some concerns just overall because of journalism. But let's just talk about how they got where they are, okay? Because the amount of lies that they've told, and I can go on today, I already did this, I made the mistake. I can go on Facebook right now and see former colleagues of mine and former J-School colleagues of mine mourning the death of the Washington Post, what will become. To Fred's point on the sports department, think of it if you're out there in the D.C. area and you're a fan of the Nationals or the Redskins, sorry, I'm going to call them that, and you'll no longer have local sports coverage in theory, right? Well, the New York Times got rid of their sports department. You might remember. You know what they did? They bought The Athletic, and they made The Athletic their
that's
sports
right.
department, right? So I don't know personally how the St. Louis Post-Dispatch survives. I mean, the only
don't
thing,
either.
there's only a couple things in that newspaper that are worthwhile. Derek Gould and some of the Cardinals coverage, and I'd say some of the stuff that Joe Holloman does. Outside of that, that paper is a complete waste of my money, and I still pay like $30 a month for it. So I subscribe to the Washington Post. I subscribe to all these newspapers. I'm hoping maybe I could pare down some of those subscriptions, so maybe this will give me the opportunity to do that. But let's be clear about one thing. The Washington Post is in this situation because of the Washington Post. It's not because of anything else. And when you start to look at the numbers here, are pretty interesting. And I was unaware of this. You want to take a gander here? Just take a guess at the subscription numbers from the New York Times, the Washington Post, on down. Anybody want to take a guess at that?
Wait, for now? Or
Yeah, right now.
As they, okay, gosh, I have no idea. Fred, what do you think? Half a mil?
No, we're talking about the New York Times. Think about the New York
Oh,
Times.
okay,
here,
well, that's
the New York
huge.
Times and the Washington Post. How huge? What would you say?
I would say 2 million?
10 million. Okay,
Really?
10 million at the New York Times.
Wow.
Washington Post far significantly lower. We're talking about like only 2-point-something million. Now, they lost a lot of subscribers in the fall because they refused to endorse Kamala. You might remember. But there are only, I think, and I'm going to look this up. I'm having more iPad problems. There's only 4 newspapers, I think, right now that have more than 1 million subscribers. The Wall Street Journal, USA Today, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. Okay? So there's healthy competition out there. There are 136 newspapers in the U.S. that have closed in the past year. 136. We have more independent journalism, right? People aren't getting, look, your kids are in their 20s. My kids are in their 20s. They're not going to the Washington Post or the New York Times for news coverage, right? They're doing it on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook, and it's scary. But Jeff Bezos had a business decision to make. And the New York Times, this is what's interesting. They added 1.4 million digital-only subscribers in 2025, including about 500,000 in the last quarter, all right? So they ended with 12.78 million total subscribers. That's a pretty big number. Digital subscription revenue increased 13.9. So New York Times is healthy, is what I'm saying right now. So what happened to the Washington Post? Well, they decided, I think, that they can't trust the Washington Post. And you have all these legends that were there at the Post and were waxing nostalgic for all this. But maybe if you would have been just a little bit better of a newspaper, and Jeff Bezos tried to tell you this 2 years ago, and other people did too, maybe you would still have a job and you'd survive today. But let's talk about the brand of the Washington Post. There's a guy, I don't know this guy, but man, he did some good work here. Daxton Brown on Twitter, at Daxton Brown. And he said, perhaps if you hadn't been a DNC subsidiary, because here's the brand of the Washington Post. This guy nailed it. I retweeted this earlier. The Melania doc is a box office flop hoax. Rural America can't live without NPR PBS hoax. The ICE detains 5-year-old hoax. The Hegseth kill everybody hoax. Trump destroying a White House hoax. Photo of starving Gaza baby hoax. Israeli troops murdered food-seeking Palestinians hoax. Trump tariffs will explode prices hoax. Maryland man, that really should say the Maryland father hoax. Black newborns much more likely to die white hoax. That was on the Supreme Court that did that. That was Ketanji Brown Jackson who repeated nonsense, and the Washington Post printed it. Trump, Elon Musk Nazi salute hoax. Mass hysterectomies performed on immigrants hoax. The all-white Trump party hoax. I mean, I'm just getting started here. This list goes on and on and on. How about this one? We know this one from St. Louis, right? Hands up, don't shoot hoax. Jussie Smollett hoax. Covington Catholic hoax. Kavanaugh hearings. I'm adding my own here. I'm going on my own because I know the list in my head outside of Daxton Brown. They lie. They lie. They lie some more, and then they keep lying. And then they're like, wait a second, we can't stay in business. I wonder why that is. So I'm having actually a lot of fun here. I don't like it when people lose their jobs, but give me a freaking break with all the whining and the crying and the death of journalism. No real American in this country, no real person who cares about their family, surviving every day, paying their bills, putting their kids through college, they don't give a rip about you people at the Washington Post because you gave them every reason, in particular in the last 5 years, I'll say 10 years, but certainly in the last 5 years, you've given them every reason to hate you and not trust you. So congratulations. You got that accomplished.
We've got a little bit of volume out there. Westbound 6440 at 270 and eastbound at 270. Southbound 270 itself, just some moderate volume south of Page down through 64. And other than that, we look pretty good at this hour. 70 looks great out of downtown. 44 is in good shape, and 55 just starting to slow a bit as you head in the construction zone, especially toward Bates, where it starts to narrow and turn before you get to Loughborough. No problems on the Poplar Street Bridge. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Guys, I want you to be your best and to feel your best and to find your optimal performance. That's what they say at Game Day Men's Health. They have some great locations here in the St. Louis area. And the offer is still out there for Matt Lawrence and his team in Chesterfield at Game Day Men's Health. 1 hour visit, you get a free testosterone and PSA test, and then they guide you through the options to what you may want to do with your life. Maybe it is optimizing energy levels and restoring overall vitality with balanced testosterone levels. They can help you with that. They have ED treatments that are very unique and really go to the root of the problem. Medical weight loss is very popular right now. Vitamin injections, peptides are really hot, but you can get a lot of misinformation about that. At Game Day Men's Health, they're going to shoot straight with you. They have an amazing staff. They have their own pharmacy, which keeps prices in check as well, and they'd love to have you in for an appointment out in Chesterfield, right by 6440 Clarkson and Olive. That's where Matt Lawrence's location is. There's a location in O'Fallon, Missouri, and then the website, GameDayMen'sHealth.com. You can book an appointment online. Take advantage. They're very serious about the 1 hour. They get you in and out. They'll give you the test results. You have a customized game plan for you. There's not a one-size-fits-all. GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Hey, a reminder, we have our fish fry schedule set for this spring, and we start at Holy Trinity Serbian Orthodox Church in the city on the 20th of February. So that's 2 weeks from this Friday. Then we go to the Knights of Columbus in Cottleville. So our tour will be taken off here very, very quickly, and we love to see people. They stop by. We do the live Reardon Roundtable. Usually the fish starts getting served around 4:30 or so, and So we're tortured for about an hour and a half because
That's
we can smell the
exactly
fish,
right.
but it's a lot of fun, and we really like meeting the listeners. Tomorrow on the show, Congressman Mike Bost will be here. We do have a roundtable set for Friday, and that's Greg Keller and former state senator Jeff Smith. So there are a couple of stories that I'm going to try to get to them. I always try to get to as many things as I possibly can on the show, but a political story that I have not touched that I think is pretty significant. Now, I never like to overreact to local elections and things that might be indicators of, bellwethers, if you will, for things that might come in the midterms or in a general election. But there was an upset in Texas that people should know about because it could have some influence or could be a warning sign. Bill King is back with us, research fellow at Rice University's Baker Institute. He is the author of Unapologetically Moderate. Welcome back, Bill. How are you?
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm good. All right, so tell us what happened. I've seen just minimal coverage. I think Politico wrote a story about this, a couple of the other, insider Washington, D.C. publications. But there was a state Senate district that flipped, and it was pretty significant down there, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah, this is Tarrant County, which is Fort Worth, which has always been what the Republicans have called fortress precincts up there in the northern part of that county that are all suburban type precincts. And the state Senate seat had been represented by a Republican since that seat was originally formed in 1992, and we did some changes to the Senate. Trump won it by 17 points in 2024, and they had a special election, and a Democrat won it, and they won it by 14 points. So it's a 31-point turnaround from Trump's election to the special election we had last week.
Okay, and I know people have said this to you, Bill, but my reaction sometimes, and I know there's a response to this, is, okay, wait a second, though. There's a lot of people, and we all know people that vote in the presidential election. They may not vote in any other election. We know people who will vote probably in the midterms here later this year because there'll be interesting items on the ballot, whether they're, initiatives that we have here in Missouri or candidates. And a lot of people don't vote in these special elections. So how can that be somewhat accurate of a representation of where the electorate is?
So there's a couple things about that. One, first, it certainly was a very low turnout. It was about a 15% turnout versus a 65% turnout in the 24 presidential election. But there are a couple things that are sort of interesting about it. One is University of Texas has been tracking, they do a tracking poll that goes way back into the 90s. And I was watching it all through 2005, and I was watching all of our statewide Republican leaders losing ground pretty significantly. The average drop in favorability, net favorability, was about 20 points during 2025. And, when you see polls, you think, well, you got this steady downtrend, but that doesn't, that's not really elections. We need to see something happen in an election. Well, all of a sudden we had an election that came up and seemed to confirm what the polling was indicating. The two other things, when we started looking at the crosstabs that went on up there were a couple of things that happened. One is something around 15% of people that normally vote Republican went over and voted for the Democrat, and that is highly unusual. And then the other thing that we saw is that all the ground that the Republicans gained in 2024 with Latinos, they lost it plus a bunch in this election. And the polling's also showing that as well. So there's a lot of troubling trends in what you see there, and I think you're right to not jump to too many conclusions from a special election, but it has certainly sent a shockwave through in Texas.
So what do those results, though, tell you? What's your gut check, Bill King? You always have a good gut check because there's so many different reasons that people choose to vote. Look, I think a fair amount of people, and I think the polling would bear this out, who voted for Trump even the first time or this last time, I know there was one in the middle there as well, did it because they were holding their nose and they just could not stand the other candidate, right? So that's a big part of where Trump was getting a lot of his support. But where is he falling out? Because obviously the answer that I would expect is, well, immigration. Too far on immigration. That's what's spinning these voters in the other direction. Is it that? Is it something else?
So I think there's a couple of things. One, when you look at the crosstabs in the University of Texas poll, what it shows is the most important thing to people is the economy and inflation.
Yeah.
And they are still seeing prices go up, not coming down. And I think you and I have talked about this before. I think every president gets way too much blame and way too much credit for what prices are doing. But when you run on, I'm going to get prices down, and then you don't do it, then people get mad about that. So I think that's probably the single most important thing. And then the second thing I'll say is, I see a lot of people online, talking about what's going on in ICE in Minnesota and say, I voted for this. Well, they may have voted for it, but the vast majority of the people didn't vote for that. What they voted for was closing the border, not sending armed, masked men all into cities all over the United States and hauling off people. The Cato Institute, which is a really good research organization, said that only 4% of the people ICE has arrested have previous criminal records for a violent crime. And that was supposed to be the people we're supposed to go for first. So I think people certainly didn't like Biden's, immigration policy, didn't like the open borders, but at the same time, they would like some sort of nuance, in trying to solve what they see as the actual problem.
Yeah. No, and I think that's true. And, I've discussed that a lot, fairly intense in the last couple of weeks, because I get concerned. Look, people have criticized me. I had one guy that criticized me about being overly concerned about the optics, but the optics matter. And, there's more than just optics, because 2 people were killed. And what we're seeing here is, and here I can offer you example, I can offer my listeners an example from your neck of the woods. Senator Cruz said that outcome in that election on Tuesday was very concerning. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said it's a wake-up call for Republicans across Texas. Greg Abbott said, and he's a hardliner, he said the White House needs to recalibrate on immigration. So there's some people that are paying attention to what happened down there in Texas.
And I think here's an important point I want to make about Latino voters, because if there's not a lot of Latino voters in the area you live in, then you may not be familiar with how complicated their view is and all this. The Democrats thought for a long time that all Latinos loved immigration, and so they would always be, quote, soft on immigration. That's not their view at all. In fact, many Latinos are pretty hard line on immigration, because a lot of them came here, the right way, and to some extent, the people coming in compete for their jobs, and so they are very much in favor of, a orderly, lawful immigration as a group. But when you start looking at every person that they're picking up there is a Latino, I mean, you haven't seen any Somalians being picked up or anything. Every one of them, and this man and his little 5-year-old boy picked up and shipped across the country to Texas, and then the judge orders them released and everything. It sure looks like, it's targeting Latinos, and I think that is really causing the Republican Party some problems. And it's really quite ironic, because here in Texas, the Republican Party had made a lot of inroads with Latino voters because, for the most part, and it's always dangerous to generalize, but for the most part, they're a pretty conservative group of people. There are a lot of them devout Catholics, devout evangelicals. They believe in family. They're not crazy about abortion. I mean, they're people that their values line up pretty good with the Republican Party. It's like, okay, that's great, but if you're going to deport my cousin, I'm not so happy with you. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. Look, I had somebody, I can't remember, Sue, who made the recommendation. A couple weeks ago, somebody said something that made so much sense to me. I like to highlight, for example, we do this at Busch Stadium. I think they do it all around the country. They have one game each year, Bill, where they recognize people who are going through the process legally and becoming, U.S. citizens.
Oh, yeah.
And it's incredibly a proud moment. And I've been in the stadium when this has happened, and everyone cheers this on. And I had a guest that said, President Trump needs to broadcast one of those and cheer people on who are going through the process legally and highlighting that, because I think something like that would go a long way. But there's no doubt to me that we're in some danger territory here just with the reality of the politics. The Republicans are up against it anyway, just because of history and the economy and all these other things. But this is not helping right now.
17 out of the last 19 midterm elections, the president's party's lost members in the House. And there's no members to lose for Trump. If he loses any, he's in trouble. And by the way, I've been looking at the polling in the Senate race, and I'm beginning to think there's a real chance that they could lose the Senate. And if they're able to hang on to it, I think it's probably going to be 51-49. And so that means the Republicans will be relying on Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins for their majority, who both can't stand Trump.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be.
It's going to be a rough 2 years, I think.
I remain more optimistic on the Senate, but look, a lot can change. I think a lot can change in any direction here between now and November. Bill, always great to have you on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate the call.
All right, take care. Joe Nocera is coming up. By the way, this is a little bit different angle, and I read about this in the Free Press a couple of days because he actually has some really good suggestions on how we might be able to get out of this immigration mess.
Oh.
And I don't know. We'll see if we can make some progress on that coming up.
We've got a stall reported. MoDOT saying it's northbound 170, just past 70. Watch for that on the right side. It looks to me like it may be on the shoulder. Accident northbound 270 just before Olive. Now, this one occurred in the center lane. Traffic, of course, is stacking up there as well. And southbound was already slow in that area. But generally, we're okay at this hour. Westbound 70 still looks great out of downtown. Little slow at Wentzville. 6440, it's starting to slow at Clayton Skinker. And then again at 270 and 55. Just some volume, especially south of Broadway, as you head into the even more intense part, down to 2 lanes part of the construction zone. We look great if you're headed into Illinois on the bridges downtown. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Remember, Senator, if you remember that George Rosenthal was talking about Kalshi. That's like one of those predictor markets. So that's really taken off. Hey, I want to get you into a more comfortable, maybe a more safer bathroom situation in your home. At Michael's Baths, they help homeowners like you feel proud of their bathrooms again. Maybe you had some folks over for the holidays. You weren't too proud of how the bathroom looked. They do tub to shower conversions, full bathroom remodels, including the paint and electrical. They do it all. They only do bathrooms. They do higher end wall options as well. They have a new offer there, but they do use great products that you're familiar with. Central and Moen, all backed by lifetime warranties. You get 5-star reviews, an A+ BBB rating, and VA recommended with Michael's Baths. And one of the things that they do specialize in is, and this is something that you might be interested in, or mom and dad, ADA accessible showers and tubs, custom grab bars and seating, and safety features that are very specifically designed for your needs, your body, what you are looking for in your situation to have the most comfort and the most safety. No gimmicks, no high-pressure sales tactics, and they come in far less on the bids than most companies. Check out Michael's Baths today. Family-owned and operated. Bathrooms you'll be proud of. michaelsbaths.com. 3:33. And when I first started saying that, it was like 3:33:33 also. It was like all threes. I just wanted to point that out. No one else cares, but I do. Sponsored by Jerry Kelly, Heating, Air Conditioning, Electrical, and Plumbing. By the way, on the topic of clocks, I just posted this on Twitter too. So it's 3 minutes until 2 o'clock Central, according to the clock in the studio, even though it's 3:34 now. We cannot figure out our... First, it was the digital clocks that went crazy. Don't know what happened there. Digital clocks work in the old-fashioned, type of clock with the big red arm or whatever you call it. Is that what you call it? You call it an arm? Hand? There you go. Hand, something like that. Finger. That thing's not working, and they can't get it to work. Aren't you kind of amazed by that? It's 2026.
It is a little shocking.
Are we going to the moon again? Mars,
yes.
stuff like that? Can't get the time right, though. We'll keep trying. We'll do our best. Sue's News coming up in the next hour. Also, at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour, my friend John Ziegler, who is the co-host of the podcast, The Death of Journalism. I actually really want to hear his opinions on what's happening at the Washington Post today. We got Duane Patterson from hotair.com after 5 o'clock. Right now, Joe Nocera back with us, senior editor and writer at the Free Press, who has written about immigration and offered some potential solutions that I'm intrigued by. Joe, how are you? Welcome back to 97.1 FM Talk in St. Louis.
Great to be here, Mark. Thank you.
I am one of the, I guess I would say I was one of the voices, or am one of the voices on the right that have been pretty critical here of the response the last couple of weeks because of Kristi Noem and some of the other nonsense about domestic terrorists. I certainly see the issue with all the organized protests and how that's having an impact, and I understand follow the money and all that. But where I come from a lot of times, Joe, is just the reality of where we are. And the reality of where we are right now, and you kind of sum this up in the column, is a lot of the American people were certainly against having millions and millions of people stream across the border, but they do not like the chaos that they're seeing right now.
That is a fact. And it's not just people in Minneapolis either. It's just you turn on the news and, you see these guys who look like, I don't know what the right word is. They look like they're in Afghanistan or Iraq or something, wrestling American citizens to the ground. It's a bad look, to say the least. And I had a guy who said to me, he said, the best immigration policy is one, the best enforcement policy is one that no one talks about. Barack Obama, 1.6 million people were deported in his first term, and if you were in the business of immigration, you called him the deporter in chief. But if you were an average American, you didn't even know this was happening.
That's right. Yeah.
And that was so much more sensible way to go about this.
So you went out, Joe, and you actually talked to 5 different immigration experts, and you were trying to find a little consensus on what might happen next and where people would support this. And, obviously there's Congress and issues there as well. So I don't think there was, consistency on any of those views, but what did you discover?
Well, no, there was more than you think. There's more than you think. The first is that, even if you're a liberal, Biden has proven that open borders is bad politics. So you just don't find anybody anymore saying, we don't need strong borders. You just don't find it. Whether there should be a wall or not, whatever, we don't have to get into that. So then the second thing is, people, there's one of the reasons they can't pass a bill on this is because there's always an amnesty clause. Somebody who's been here 10 or 20 years, they say, well, they've been here so long and they pay taxes and they have businesses and they're sending their kids to school and their kids are Americans, so we should let them have a path to citizenship. But the right is very, very firmly opposed to that. So a number of my experts said, well, there's no reason we couldn't have a kind of status that allows them to live in the country, but deprives them of citizenship and thus deprives them of the ability to vote.
Right.
One of the things the right has always been scared about is that they think the Democrats there's a big plot to bring in immigrants to create more democratic votes. And if you did that, you'd get rid of that, but you'd also have the economic immigrants. You can't really have an American economy at this point if you lose 13 million immigrants. You just can't. So you need a way to keep those people in the country. And if they've been here a long time and if they paid their taxes and they haven't, committed any crimes, then there ought to be a way to keep them here without having citizenship. I was really surprised at how many people on both the left and the right thought, that was something the country would buy.
So what would let me explore that a little bit. So what would that how would that manifest itself a little bit?
Well, they'd have a special kind of visa or a special kind of green card that would basically say, we're not going to deport you as long as you don't commit a crime.
Right.
But you don't have citizenship. But it would allow you, for instance, to go home to Colombia because your mom died and go to the funeral and still come back to the U.S., without having to go through a whole lot of rigmarole because you have roots in the country. I mean, the issue, how many the academic studies on this do not support the idea that immigrants are taking jobs away from Americans. I mean, you may not want to hear that, but
I'm not against those stats. Look, I'm one that would be in the camp that is looking for a compromise here. That might be a dirty word, right? But look, I understand that, and I understand there's economic aspects of this with migrants. Absolutely.
And so, this is an idea that is born of compromise. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Then the other thing is you have to tighten the asylum rules. I mean, one of the big mistakes Biden made was to say, anybody who comes in and says, I have an asylum claim, I have a fear of persecution, gets to have their claim adjudicated. Well, that's ridiculous. Most of those people are coming here for economic reasons, and yes, they face poverty, and yes, there are gangs in these cities, but they're not personally fingering XYZ person for persecution. 90% of these asylum claims would be immediately denied, and we should have a system where they are denied at the border and people are sent back, and those who have stronger claims, then they go through the immigration courts and have their thing adjudicated. I didn't get into this column, but the truth is the immigration courts need a ton more money because the backlog is so.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
Huge, and that's the reason people are here 4 or 5 years, before their claim, and by the time their claim is adjudicated, they've got roots in the country.
Right. Yeah. The process is so
here's another thing.
bungled.
So here's another thing, and this is really important. You need to tighten the E-Verify system, and you need to nationalize. You need to federalize it so that when somebody applies for a job, you can immediately find out whether they are here legally or not. Right now the E-Verify system can be gamed. It's document based. It's like paper based, and it's not digital. And if you had a strong E-Verify system, that would make a huge difference in terms of dealing with the problem.
I feel like
those are the main things.
I feel like we've been talking about making that stronger for a long time, and it never seems to work. All right, so in summation here, and you kind of did this in the column. Look, some of this is a good outline of what you could do. You got a strong border, which I think has been accomplished. No amnesty, but allow immigrants who have lived here, to gain status that allows them to work without being a citizen. The E-Verify situation that you just mentioned, a tighter definition of asylum. So some of this sounds reasonable.
One other thing, enforcement that truly focuses on criminals and doesn't just grab people out of their homes for no reason.
Okay, that's important there. And I think so that really is a framework. But the problem is Congress, right? Because nobody is willing to go out on even a slight ledge to fix this situation.
That's right. Because we're so polarized, they're so polarized that the idea of compromise on any of this is anathema to them. And that's what there's so many of our problems that come down to that, but immigration in particular comes down to that because this is a solvable problem. It's just it is. It's not insurmountable. And that's when I didn't sort of think about it that hard before I wrote this column, but writing this column made me realize. My God, you've got people from all over the political spectrum talking to me about this, and they're mostly saying the same thing.
Well, Joe, what's interesting is you mentioned the right a lot, and obviously I got a lot of – this is a conservative radio station. I think you're right about maybe, where a majority might be on the hard right. But what you describe in this situation and what we just talked about, I think President Trump would be down with all of it, don't you?
I actually do. And I think the surprise to me was hearing people on the left toss out these ideas and acknowledging we need a tougher border policy and acknowledging that the path to citizenship won't work. To me, that was the big surprise.
Yeah, that's interesting. Look, great piece. I loved it. Joe Nocera, it's in the Free Press, The Way Out of the Immigration Mess. Thanks for coming on here this afternoon, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Hey, listen, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Take care.
Well, on the roads, we've got some volume. The problem is on 270, really close to Olive, there was an accident, and it happened to be northbound, really just before Olive, and it started in the center lane. Then they closed the 3 right lanes. So it's really causing a delay for northbound drivers. Expect a slow go almost back to Manchester. But southbound is slowing for a look, and then it's slowing again at Manchester and again at 44. Other than that, we're okay. 70 westbound is fine out of downtown, out through Wentzville. Eastbound slowing at Cave Springs. And westbound 40, just moderate volume now at Hampton. I'm Sue Thomas with traffic. This report is brought to you by Barron Mirror Glass and Door. Simply the finest when it comes to mirror glass and shower doors. You can't find better quality, prices, or service. They have the basics all the way up to the elite. Barron Mirror Glass and Door can't be beat. I'm Sue Thomas. That's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
So bear with me here, trying to, avoid confusion. I have tickets to give away this afternoon. Now, I'm not sure if they're for the Black Keys, Counting Crows, or the Black Crows.
Crows.
I think it's the Black Crows.
Yes.
Because I started out the week thinking it was the Black Keys because there was the word black involved, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And then I thought, well, maybe it's Counting Crows because there's the word crow involved. But it's the Black Crows, and they're coming to the amphitheater, and we have tickets to give away in the next hour and a song to play from, this is going to be crazy, Sue, the correct band.
Love it.
That we're giving tickets
Love
away
it.
from. Hey, so I love it when Hollywood types step into it. It's maybe the most fun that I ever have when they're, shamed, and even people on their side have to realize how foolish they look. And this is true with Billie Eilish in her multi-million-dollar Los Angeles mansion, because she went on stage the other night and said that all land, no one is illegal on stolen land. So the First Angelinos is the group of indigenous inhabitants in the Los Angeles basin. And they want to take Billy up on their offer. The Tongva tribe says Eilish has not contacted our tribe directly regarding her property. We do value the instance when public figures provide visibility to the true history of this country. It's our hope that in future discussions, the tribe can explicitly be referenced to ensure the public understands that the greater Los Angeles basin remains Gabriello Tongva territory. That's pretty well done, by the way, on the part of the tribe.
It is very well done.
I don't know if they got it, cleaned up by ChatGPT, which they very well might have, but it was exceptionally well communicated. But I like this guy. So this is what I love about independent journalism, because you know what? Not one of those fired reporters from the Washington Post is going to go up to Billie Eilish's front door and do this, because that's what this guy decided to do. And he's got an English accent, which even makes it work.
First of all, isn't that ironic? Massive gates keeping people out. I thought Billy didn't believe in borders. Well, according to the driveway, Billy does believe in borders. She believes in massive gates keeping people out.
Yeah, there's a big gate. Sue's correcting me. She thinks it's an Australian
I'm
accent.
not sure.
Right? You could be right about that, but this guy's hilarious because he keeps trying.
A couple of cameras up there as well. The lights are on, so somebody must be home. Let us in, please, Billy. We are here because this is stolen land, Billy, and we think we should be given access to your quite lovely $3 million mansion. And such is Billy's concern for security and privacy. It's surrounded by pretty decent security fencing. Very nice indeed. Massive security hedges as well.
I'm sure Billy has had quite a bit to say over her young career about climate change as well. And I think her carbon footprint is pretty big.
I think it is. I guessed Australian. You're right. That this guy sounds English, because there's a guy in Australia who said the same thing. He's going to come over and try to move in with her, since all land is everybody's,
why
and it was
not?
stolen. Right?
That's an offer to anyone. I mean, think about it. If you're a squatter in L.A., and there's a lot of them, right? You just quote Billie Eilish.
Yeah.
Say, look, this is all stolen land. You go to Beverly Hills and just pop into someone's front door and hang out at the pool. Stolen land. I think we can all do it. Now, one thing that's happening, this is separate but related, and this is happening all across the country, and it is happening here in St. Louis. I was told it happened at my alma mater. Could we say alma mater when it comes to high school? Parkway West?
I
say
think
that?
so.
Okay. But it happened at Ladue Middle School yesterday, too. So, for example, I was getting some of these messages, and some of these things have gone viral because libs of TikTok have linked to them and highlighted them. So Dr. Angela Thompson, who is the principal at Ladue Middle School, said today at 10:30 a.m., this was yesterday, approximately 300 students exercised their right to assemble, voicing their concerns about U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This was part of a national effort to organize and mobilize students. This event was not school-sponsored. However, we honored our students' rights to participate in the democratic process. Students will be held responsible for any missed work. So that, I think I read that yesterday, and we had kindergartners in some parts of the country that were doing this as well. I got one of the messages from, some of this stuff is hard to keep track of, Sue, because I keep trying to take screen captures and stuff like that, because I had the one from Parkway West that someone put on my on my radar today as well. So there's all kinds of things that are happening out there. My question would be, what happens? Because what they'll tell you is none of the kids are forced to do this. This is voluntary, if you will. But, aren't you going to feel like you're kind of alienated? If you don't do it. Well, if you say, no, I'm not going to do this, maybe I have a different opinion on immigration, that probably won't end well for you. So here's something that was put up this is in San Francisco, so maybe it shouldn't be a surprise, but this is at middle school and elementary schools. They're actually putting some QR codes and some signs up in the school that say, salute, size, how many officers, actions, what are the officers doing, location, so this is where SALUTE, L, location, U, uniforms, what are they wearing, time, what time and date were they seen, E, equipment, what gear do they have, document and record everything. Let's look at the facts. This is for kids. This isn't for the Ice Watch people. Oh, yeah. These are things that are being posted in elementary schools and middle schools and high schools across the country. How to report ICE. They're teaching these kids how to be activists, and they're proud of it, by the way, which is quite something. And I plan, I don't know if I have the tape right now, but I played this yesterday where the kids were cheering, choose kindness. We support immigrants. Okay, that's good. I support immigrants too. We're kind of focusing on the illegal kind, but your teacher's not telling you that because you're being brainwashed and indoctrinated. KMS loves immigrants. That's the school district. That's the Catherine Michaels School in San Francisco. Yes, we love immigrants. We love legal immigrants. I think that immigrants who are here legally love legal immigrants, but they don't like the illegal kind. Now, some of this gets tricky, Sue, because I just got a message from a listener who I think, if I can tell the tone of the message, was that they did not agree with me on much of my immigration points recently. She said, if you've come here illegally, you've committed a crime. I live in an area here in Missouri where we have a lot of Hispanics. I have no problem with them. They work. They try to speak English. They pay for their goods and groceries. They're not a problem. On the other hand, I live in an area where a whole lot of Haitians were brought here whom I do not know. They are on food stamps. They're on WIC. They're getting free phones. They're getting help with their housing. They're working at the meat plant up here and still collecting these benefits. Personally, as an older adult, they have to go back to work to make ends meet. I find this disturbing. Well, I think everybody does. But the problem is how to deal with all this appropriately. There is no physical, realistic way to swoop everyone up who's not here legally.
No.
So you kind of do your best you can, and you focus on the criminals first, which is what Tom Homan was trying to do, which was what I think DHS and ICE was doing, and it kind of got off the rails for two reasons. One, they may have overstepped a little bit, and two, they may have underestimated the power of these radical organizations because they're pretty good at what they do and drawing attention, and they're organized, and they have money. So my position is, look, you have to recognize that that's having an impact. You know, if you're looking at this from a PR war perspective, the Trump administration is losing the PR war. You can be out there saying, I don't care, I want them all gone. That's fine. But you have to look at it from a bigger picture, which is they're losing the PR war. And if these numbers start to get even slimmer when it comes to the majorities in the House and the Senate, you heard Bill King say earlier he thinks the Senate's in play. I hope that that's not true. It could be. But that presents a whole lot of difficult things for the American people, things that we voted on last November to avoid with Kamala. So there's warning signs out there. By the way, the good news is I think the president is very aware of those warning signs, and I think that, you know, there's going to be more focus on the economy, et cetera, in the months to come. There's a lot that can happen between now and November. There's no doubt about that. Sue's News coming up in the next hour.
We've got an accident on northbound 270, and this thing is just a little bit south of Olive. It started in the center lane, then they moved it off, and now the right lanes are blocked in that area. So that, of course, is creating a jam behind it. And southbound drivers are slowing for a look. So northbound is jammed back to Manchester. Southbound is pretty slow just north of Page. That is the worst of it traffic-wise right now. Westbound 70, just some moderate volume at Jennings Station past the airport. 64 is slowing Hampton out through Clayton Skinker. But we look good if you're headed into Illinois on the bridges downtown. Southbound 55, pretty slow, headed into the construction zone south of Arsenal. And Route 3 is jammed in both directions on the Illinois side due to a slow-moving train. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
First, we will be closing the sports
Wednesday edition of Sue's News is coming up. John Ziegler, the host of the podcast The Death of Journalism, on the Washington Post layoffs at 4:30.
More questions than answers. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. On day 4 of the search for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, reported missing last weekend from her Arizona home. The Pima County Sheriff denying reports of a possible person of interest.
In the absence of hard information from investigators, speculation has been filling that void. That is why the sheriff put out the statement. There was speculation about one particular name of a person who may have been questioned in connection with the abduction, and then the sheriff came out emphasizing no current suspects, no persons of interest, and the search is continuing.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt in Tucson. There have also been reports of possible ransom notes sent to media outlets. The White House confirming earlier today that President Trump spoke with Savannah Guthrie. The president also speaking with China's president, describing the call as long and thorough on numerous topics, including his planned trip to China in April. This as Vice President Vance was proposing a new trading bloc with allies and partners at a D.C. summit with 50 countries aimed at countering China's dominance on critical minerals. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says a proposal for ICE reforms is coming soon.
We're ready to sit down and negotiate but it's got to be strong, it's got to be tough, it's got to rein in ICE in very serious ways and end the violence.
9 days left to negotiate under a short-term Homeland Security bill. Border czar Tom Homan says the rhetoric and violence against federal agents has to stop, but he also says there's more cooperation now in Minnesota.
We currently have an unprecedented number of counties communicating with us now and allowing ICE to take custody of illegal aliens before they hit the streets.
So he says about 700 agents are being pulled out of the state. Sentencing day for Ryan Ruth, convicted of trying to kill President Trump on a golf course, gets life in prison. America's listening to Fox News.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number, 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS. Visit LifeLock.com for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Welcome back to Winter Hack Radio, the place for clever hacks to survive the season. Icy driveway? Well, try spreading sand or birdseed to help with traction. Snowy puppy paws? Well, grab a whisk, brush it off, done. Catch COVID-19? Well, just get...
Actually, there's no hack for COVID-19. But if you test positive, prescription medications for COVID exist. Ask your doctor if they're right for you. Visit PfizerForAll.com to learn more. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Welcome back. Hour number 2. We're going to visit with John Ziegler at the bottom of the hour. The media story of the day is the Washington Post laid off a bunch of people. They killed their sports desk completely. And here was somebody, there's a lot of confusion about some of these people losing their jobs. Here's someone named Akila Johnson who tweeted this out a few hours ago. In 2021, I was hired by the Washington Post to cover health disparities and explore the way racism and social inequity affects health. 4 months ago, I became the Generations reporter, exploring how health is experienced by different people across the life course. Today, I was laid off. I'm so confused as to why that person would not have a job
Right, that
at the
really
Washington
seems
Post. That's
important.
weird.
Yeah.
Mystified by that. Jeff Bezos might want to look into that and perhaps pull that one back because her role seems so incredibly important at the Washington Post. But we'll talk about that a little bit more at the bottom of the hour with John. So, I've admitted this, and I'm not doing it to say anything other than just being honest. As a Mizzou guy, I root for Mizzou. I hate Illinois. Have I mentioned how much I hate Illinois? I have a lot of respect for their basketball program right now. I'm actually thinking about putting money on them to win the whole thing because I think they're a legit Final Four
Wouldn't be
team.
a bad idea.
But that orange color and all that stuff, I hate it. So SLU, I've never been a huge fan of SLU. I've rooted for them as a St. Louisan, but it's different when you have the attachment to a team. But I watched the game last night with Davidson, and a couple of observations. One, that's a damn good team that Josh Schertz has. And I knew that. I've heard you guys talking about it. I've really never watched them as much as I had last night. And when I tuned in, and Fred, you know this, Ethan knows this too, they were behind. In fact, I think they were down. Were they down by like 13 at one point?
They were down by 13 at one point in the
Double
first half.
digits.
Right. But they closed to within 5, I think, or 4 by the half, and then they just kind of rolled in the second half. But I have to ask you this, Fred, because you watched the whole game, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the game, I literally had to turn it off. I muted it at first, but I got so annoyed. There was somebody in the stands that kept yelling and yelling and yelling, and I think they were yelling about one of the SLU players. I don't know, but it was very, very apparent on the microphones. It was an away game, so it wasn't here at Chaffetz. But in my audio system, it became so annoying, and they weren't turning it down. I think that the audio engineers could have probably done something to help it. Did you hear that at all, Ethan, or not?
I missed that.
I mean, when I was listening to it, it was so blatantly
What were they
annoying.
yelling? Do you know what they were yelling?
Well, I heard them. What's the one kid? He looks like he's 10 years old on SLU. Brady, something or other.
Dunlap?
Yeah. I think they were yelling something
Brady
about
Dunlap.
his name, but I
He's the
don't know.
one that was getting all the 3-pointers.
So they were probably trying to harass him.
Right.
But it was to the point where it was so loud. Maybe it was just my sound system that I was waiting for a referee to go over and say, "Hey, shut the F up or we're going to hit this team with a technical." That's how loud it was.
Wow.
So anyway, great performance by SLU, but I didn't understand what the hell was happening there.
Brady Dunlap does look like he's 10, by the way.
I know,
Just
but
wanted
man,
to
that
confirm
kid's
He's
shoot.
6'7"
Yeah,
and
200
looks like
pounds.
he's 10.
It's in the face. It's all in the face.
Yeah,
But
it's in the
that
face.
kid is a shooter, man. I'm telling you.
I tell you what, I was listening to Bob Ramsey talk about the game while they were gearing up for it,
Yeah.
and talking to one of the coaches, and he was saying they were talking about the joy that these guys play with, and that's part of how they are winning. The coach is joyful. They love each other as a team. They love the coach, and that's just fun to watch, regardless.
They have 8 guys averaging 8 points or more.
Woo!
They are so deep this year,
that's
and
awesome.
I think I saw a stat over the last 4 games. It was 60 of 119 on 3-point baskets. That is absolutely insane. That is over 50% from 3 the last 4
so
games
fun to
combined.
watch.
So
And-
keep shooting like that.
And
Watch out.
that's why they win. They can come from behind to win in the second half because they're so strong up and down the lineup that they can wear out the other team.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
oh,
what
that's
they do.
awesome.
But that
he
was
does
impressive,
look like he's
and
10.
I'm rooting for him because I'd love to see them make some noise in the NCAA tournament for sure. I've had a Southwest Airlines topic on the list for a couple of days.
Yes, please. I want to hear this.
This comes from our friend the Sklar brothers. I love the Sklar brothers from here in St. Louis. Very, very funny. They've been in so many television shows and movies, but they were on a Southwest flight over the weekend, and everyone was pretty much seated in the middle of the plane, and they said this: Southwest Air has really figured out this whole assigned seating thing. 42 people on the flight, and we're all jammed into 7 rows, and they won't let us move. And we were not given an option for a different seated booking. Good call to switch to this system. Now, some people said that it was a weight thing, that they were doing a weight balance.
Oh, I see.
But
it hasn't
7
been
rows
up till now.
Look,
we've all sat anywhere we wanted to.
Let me tell you something. I was on a Southwest
this is
plane
not good.
multiple times. No, I'm just telling you. During the early days of the pandemic, I was on at least 3 flights, if not 4, to and from Vegas that had maybe a dozen people. I mean, there was one flight, I think we were just like
Dang.
10 or 12 people.
Wow.
We could sit anywhere we wanted.
Yes.
It didn't matter at all. So why would they restrict, unless there was,
makes
maybe
no
this was a
sense.
smaller plane and there was a weight balance issue, because why the hell wouldn't you say sit wherever the hell you want?
But it's ridiculous. Fred, what was your story? Didn't you bought tickets for,
I
it
bought
March?
tickets. Yeah, I'm going in March, and I wanted to choose my seat, and I saw which seats were taken. And when I tried to click on a seat to choose, they said they'll assign it to me at the desk when I get there.
It sounded like that
What
either.
is that?
So let me ask you this: I was never under the impression that I thought Southwest was the best of the airlines. I'm a Delta guy. I like Delta. So let me ask you this: is
Money.
Southwest still number one in your eyes, or is someone else going to be taking that spot now?
Ethan, I'm a little bit privileged because I have the Southwest Chase Visa card, and because of that, I get things that you regular, little folks don't get. But that's so I can't make my decision because if I'm still privileged, then I'm going to say, they're still the best.
First, you have your fancy card, then you have your fancy speakers where only you can hear the people yelling in the background.
Right,
of the
exactly.
SLU game.
Yeah, you know, I'm an elitist. So
Sue, how about you?
I had that credit card and got rid of it, so now I don't know. Maybe they'll think that I'm privileged for a few more weeks, but it doesn't make sense. If you're going to be able to pick your seat, you should be able to pick it, and they're not letting Fred do that, so I don't
like
get
it.
that at all.
I don't like it.
I was booking the seat before it actually started, so maybe that's how they did it.
Oh, that could
before
be.
it actually started.
Okay, then one thing I want to do here, I missed this story last week, but I love this so much because it's just great audio. And you're telling me that this kind of went viral, Ethan, last week. Shakardi Richardson, who is she's an Olympic sprinter, right?
Yes.
And she's a gold medalist. She won in the 2024 Olympics a gold medal. So she's down in her Aston Martin last week. So this is last Thursday in Florida, Winter Park, and she's busted for speeding. Now, I told you that I had a speeding ticket from a couple of weeks ago, right? Mm-hmm. On Hawkins Road in St. Louis County.
Over?
Well, no, it was 13 over. It was 30.
Yeah.
It was 48 and 35, so that would be 13. Again, I still think it was, white dude, fancy car, civil rights violation, clear lawsuit that might end up at the Supreme Court. Okay, but outside of that, I was only going 13 over. She's going 104 and a 65.
I would wipe that smile off your face. I'm Sergeant McDaniels with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. You're being stopped for dangerous excessive speeding.
I understand my tire at the back is like literally on 29.
So you're driving at 100. Hold on. You're driving at 104 miles an hour in a 65 mile an hour zone with subpar equipment, flashing people to get out of your lights, out of your lane. Following too close.
Yeah, so she said what she said there was that she had a tire that was low. So, yeah, it makes complete sense to go 100 miles an hour when you have a low tire, right?
Every lane to pass everybody, cutting me off, passing a car on the inside shoulder with their hazard lights on. You're going to jail for dangerous excessive speeding.
I'm so sorry. I did not mean to do that. My phone, I didn't even know my car was speeding.
That's why they give you a speedometer.
Oh, that's my favorite. I didn't know my car was speeding. And he goes, that's why they give you a speedometer. I love the way the cop handles this.
I communicate with you, sir. I really do not want to go to jail.
No, most people don't, but you got to think about that before you do the speed. I need your license, your registration, and your insurance. You were speeding.
So I was, and I totally didn't know. If you look at my phone, my buttons right here, they jump around. My phone is sitting here, and it's slid on here. I literally see it's not even in normal mode, and I see that. My apologies, sir. Please, I communicate.
The mode has nothing to do with your gas pedal. I need your license.
That's a great response, too.
Hey, sir, I really want to work. Can you really work?
She doesn't want to go to jail. She's trying to work it out here. There's some crying that's going to happen. That's what I should have done a couple of weeks ago, by the way. I should have cried. Would have worked. It would have worked.
No intentions of me speeding today. I promise you, sir.
Is this a good address for you, Lake Valley Drive?
Yes, sir. I'm here. I'm local, sir. Please work with me. I promise you.
I don't know what work with you means.
Not work with me. I understand that. I will take the ticket. I will show the
No,
court.
like I told you, you're going to jail.
Please don't allow me to go to please, sir. Please.
Listen to me.
Please, sir. I really.
If nothing you say is going to change that. You are going to jail.
Sir, am I going to jail, Jake?
Yes.
Sir, I really was not intentionally speeding at
That's
all.
even more scary. That means that you're doing things unintentionally on a task that requires all your attention.
Sir, please, I'm begging you.
You are going to have a little bit of time to make some phone calls.
Yeah.
You are going to jail. I am towing your car.
She's begging and begging and begging. He ain't going for it, and then she ends up in jail.
You have two options. Listen,
Sir, please.
listen, you have two options.
Please, sir.
The first option is you can either ride with me in my car.
Damn, that's loud.
The second option is you are going to go to jail in a cage car. Which do you prefer?
I promise you, I don't want to go to jail. I'm right here. I have a team here.
Yeah, I should have cried. I'm telling you, I should have cried. But that didn't work for her. But, 104. not really knowing that you're going that fast. The other thing that I heard there, and this is what pisses me off, and it kind of is what pisses me off about my speeding ticket, even though I still was technically breaking the law. We all see these people out on the roads that are weaving in and out. I am shocked by the reckless driving that goes on a daily basis. And it sounds like that's what she was doing. She wasn't only speeding. I mean, you can speed, and I've gone fast, and I'm a pretty, I have a pretty heavy foot. But when you're zipping in and out and creating hazards,
the cop off.
Yeah, that's cause for going to jail, which is what happened to her. Sue's News on a Wednesday, coming up next.
We still have an accident on northbound 270 just south of Ladue Road, and they've got the right lane and the right shoulder blocked. This is better than it was, but we still have a jam that goes back through Manchester. Southbound drivers slowing for a look. We've got southbound 170 starting to slow, especially headed down towards 6440. And that's lined up westbound 40 approaching Kings Highway out through McCausland. And then on either side of Lake St. Louis Boulevard, 70 moderate volume Jennings Station Road, eastbound slowing at 370. And 55 is pretty slow tonight. Arsenal down through Bates. If you're headed into Illinois, we look fine on the bridges downtown. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Hey, I have a pair of tickets to give away, not now, a little later this afternoon for the Black Crowes and Whiskey Myers at the Amphitheater July 25th. It's going to be a great summer rock and roll show. So that's coming up even later this hour right here on 97.1 FM Talk.
You're listening to The Mark Reardon Show.
Yeah, you are.
That was an accident. I could have tried to play that off as the right button because it really wouldn't have mattered, but this is the right button here.
These allegations are deeply concerning.
Does the president have any comment?
We're not going to comment.
It's not clear
clear messaging.
And now, Sue's News. Brought to you by Sue.
I thought I handled it pretty well.
Yeah, I thought you did.
I think you did.
Yeah, that was good.
You know something? When Sue was gone last and Mark was gone, and I think Ethan was gone.
Yeah, it was just you.
Oh, it
and
was the
Mike
day that you were
Elam.
here by
I did
yourself.
Fred's News.
Yeah.
There was an intro that said Fred's News sponsored by Fred.
Oh,
No way.
I love
Yeah,
that.
from years ago. They did it
Oh,
years
that's
ago.
awesome.
And they
one of
found it?
Yeah, Daniel found it, and it was like,
How about
and
that?
now Fred's
Well,
News.
now we know.
Remember that.
We
Now
all
we
were
have
blown
that.
away and
Well,
just couldn't
So now
believe it.
Ethan's the
I
only
didn't
one that
even
doesn't have
remember
his
it.
own.
Yeah,
Oh,
Ethan, you
dear.
need your own open there, huh?
boy.
Mm.
Well, somebody get
Way
it
to-
on that.
Way to make Ethan feel left out, Fred. Good job.
That's fine.
Happy National Sweater Day. Oh, I love a sweater. And National Homemade Soup Day. I did make black bean soup yesterday. I do like the homemade soup. Fred, what is your go-to? Do you make a soup?
Well,
Are you just
Marie
a waffle
Marie
only?
Marie makes a lot of chicken noodle soup.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Mark Reardon.
Oh, I don't make a soup, but I do enjoy soup. But can I take you back to the sweater topic just
Yes.
briefly here? What's your opinion of the cardigan sweater?
I'm wearing
You're
one.
wearing, but for men.
It has to be.
That's all
I
you
have
need
to
to say.
look at it.
Okay.
Yes.
Because, like, here's where I am with my wardrobe right now. I used to, Fred knows this because he's worked with me for a long time. I used to buy so much clothes, so much expensive
so
clothes,
many clothes.
designer
There you
clothes,
go.
a lot, so many
Yes.
clothes, whatever. I bought a lot of
Okay,
clothes.
all right, fine.
But the pandemic killed it. It really did. Like, I was doing TV work before that, so that was one of the reasons. We used to have a stiffer dress code, and I like to, look nice. Now I'm at the age where I don't give a crap of what I
Yeah.
look like, right? I've kind of moved on from caring about that. So I'm recycling things from the wardrobe. I have a lot of stuff. I have a lot of clothes that's nice. Got this cardigan that I really like. Haven't worn it in years.
Let me see it.
Okay,
Wear it and let
should
me
I wear
observe.
it? All right.
Yeah.
I was going to kind of do it like maybe with a little T-shirt look.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'm going to wear it maybe Friday. How does that sound?
Okay, good.
And you can tell me. Because
Yes.
I always liked it, but I haven't worn it in a while.
Okay, I look forward to that.
All right.
Fred, does Joyce dip into the cardigans for you, or is she a shirt woman only?
She's the shirt woman only.
Okay, that's fair. It's good to have one specific. Ethan, you a cardigan man, a sweater man?
Very anti-sweater for myself personally. I
Wow.
just don't
I
like
used to
the
love
look
sweaters.
for me.
I love
did.
sweaters.
Yes,
I
they're
don't
so
wear them anymore, though.
cozy. They look good.
Right.
And it's also National Girls and Women in Sports Day. Oh, yay. Now, on this day
we
in
all
history.
support that. That's
Happy
for sure.
Caitlin Clark Day. That's what I heard, right?
Oh, that's a good one. On this day in history, 22 years ago, in 2004, a little website called the Facebook was launched. Facebook is 22 years old. It was launched, of course, we've all seen the movie, by a Harvard sophomore named Mark Zuckerberg. Happy birthday to Facebook, 22 years old. What was the name of that movie, Mark? Where
Social
they told
Network.
Yeah, the
Thank
social network.
you,
Which, by the way,
thank you,
it was a
Ethan.
good movie. It really was.
Love that movie.
But Facebook has become like the most toxic
Oh, yeah,
social media
people
platform.
love to put up politics.
Yeah.
And it's really annoying. It's really annoying.
I like it for the pictures of my bunny
Oh,
and
yeah,
my puppy
that's very
and my
nice.
daughter.
Now, we've got some sound. Since the Olympics are coming, in fact, I've already had a conversation with a friend of mine about we're going to eat lunch on Saturday, but we're going to go to a place where they'll have the Olympics on, and we've looked up what sports will be there, so we're going to go at 11:30
fun.
so we can see the ski jumping. I love that crazy stuff.
By the way, I have everything that you ever wanted to know about ski mountaineering, but we're afraid to ask, so I can do that
Really?
later in the show. Oh,
Oh,
yeah, I got
good.
all the information on that.
Well, we've got the update on Lindsey Vonn. She got helicoptered to a hospital after a wipeout last week in Switzerland. And yesterday she was talking about it and announced that she is going to go ahead and compete.
I completely ruptured my ACL. I also have bone bruising plus meniscal damage, which we're not sure if that was pre-existing or from the crash. I know what my chances were before the crash, and I know my chances aren't the same as it stands today, but I know there's still a chance. And as long as there's a chance, I will try.
Okay, I don't understand how you
Wow,
can do that
how about
with those
that?
injuries.
We
But
got NBA players taking nights off for load management.
Right,
while
good point.
Lindsey Vonn at 41 is going to be skiing on a torn ACL.
man, that is an excellent point, Ethan.
She says she's not in any pain, and this is going to be her 5th Olympics, and she wants to compete,
That's
so she
awesome.
will.
I hope she wins.
I do too. Okay, this is a story we haven't really talked about. Jill Biden's ex-husband has been charged with the murder of his wife.
I know. Becky
Isn't
told me about
that
this last
bizarre?
night. But this is like this is from the 70s, ex-husband, right?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Long
she
time
married him
ago.
when she was 19.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's? Jill Biden, not Joe Biden.
I heard Joe.
I'm sorry.
Jill.
In
I'm sorry, I
fairness-
should have said.
Okay.
Dr. Jill Biden.
In fairness to Ethan, I kind of heard Joe too, but that's yes, it's Jill.
I know what I should have said.
Wait, was there something
Wait a
that I
minute.
was missing?
Here's what I should have said.
Holy.
But it's first-degree murder. Now, he's 77 years old. He was indicted in Delaware on Monday, and it stems from a domestic dispute on December 28th. And apparently when police arrived, she was unresponsive. Jill was married to this guy, William Stevenson, from 1970 to 1974. She then married Joe Biden in 1977. But, they were... How bizarre is that?
Yeah.
Your ex-husband is charged with murder.
Yeah, it's kinda
Apparently, their divorce in 74 was really ugly and contentious. I'm not sure why.
Well, I think she made the right choice.
Yeah, yes.
Kind of. I don't know.
Well, maybe.
Actually,
I
yeah,
don't know.
maybe not so much.
And just a couple Super Bowl factoids. John Bon Jovi will introduce the New England Patriots at the Super Bowl. Seattle native Chris Pratt
Yeah.
will introduce the Seahawks.
I like that.
And part of NBC's Super Bowl pregame show will be broadcast from Alcatraz Island. I didn't know that.
That's
fun.
interesting.
But I thought that was kind of a nice twist. I said that's a first. Last year, the Breaking Bad house in Albuquerque, New Mexico, hit the market. Now, this is a normal neighborhood, but somebody got in the owner's ear and said, "Oh, this is a really super valuable house. You can sell it for $4 million." They put it on the market for $4 million. Guess what? No one bought it. So they just dropped it to $400,000.
That's a pretty steep decrease.
It just made me laugh.
But you would have thought maybe $4 million was way too much.
Well,
but you would have thought
yes.
just for the novelty of it that some person with a bunch of money would have paid $1 million or something.
Well, think about the house, though, Mark. Think about that show. There wasn't anything in there that you thought, this is so great.
Well, at the end of it, there wasn't. I don't know what the house
That's what I'm
was.
saying.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there you really want.
But here's the question. I really don't know the answer to this. But I'm guessing, okay? I'm guessing the house is the house from the outside. That the scenes
I thought
were
the inside was
But
the
was
inside.
the interior actually what we were seeing, or were
That's
they
a
doing
good
that
question.
on a studio set?
I do not know that.
If it is, then someone should buy it and
turn
should
it into an
replicate
Airbnb.
it. And yes,
Yes.
exactly. Museum or Airbnb or something, and I bet you'd make that money back.
Right, but I think, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this. My guess is that the exterior of the house is the only real part of
Yeah,
it.
Okay,
if
I'll
that's
Google
the case,
it.
then that's
Hey, will
different.
you Google that, Ethan, and see
No, I'm on
just to see if that's true? Okay, Minute Maid is discontinuing its frozen canned juices after 80 years. Fred, did your mother send that to you? Did you send that to you?
I was going to put it on my topic list today because we all grew. I mean, the last time I had one of those things, I couldn't even tell you, but we all grew up with
Yes.
those.
Yeah.
I mean, Mom would have to remember to get the can out of the freezer to have it just be liquid, and if she didn't, plop. And then you'd have to put the water in there and try to get
Ethan?
it.
Yeah.
Ethan,
Do
do
you
you
know what we're talking
anything about
Yeah,
this?
I
Okay,
do.
all right.
We had this when we were little. I didn't really care for it, though. I didn't
Yeah,
like it.
well,
It's
that's
not
why I haven't
great.
had one in decades.
It's not great. They're now that's just really how we made orange juice and lemonade pre-millennium. They were meant for the soldiers in World War II until the war ended, and then the first cans of frozen concentrated OJ hit the stores 80 years ago in 1946, and Coca-Cola owns Minute Maid now and blamed shifting consumer preferences. That's because we wanted to be fresh. But it's amazing how long that lasted.
That's a long time. It really is.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, I wouldn't, if you would have asked me before that story today that I saw, I would have guessed that they didn't sell those things anymore.
I totally forgot about it.
I know.
I got some information here on
Oh,
the
thank
Breaking
you.
Bad house. It looks like the interior, including the kitchen and the hallways,
Yes.
was a soundstage replica.
What
Some
about the living room?
exterior shots and possibly minor quick scenes were
Yeah,
actually used in the house.
And that's what usually happens.
Well, dang it. All right, and
the Brady
finally,
Bunch wasn't filmed in that house either.
Oh, that's depressing. And finally, in Sue's News, we have today's random fact. A $1 bill doesn't live as long as you might think. According to the Federal Reserve, each buck lasts about, what do you think, Fred?
6 months.
Oh, gosh.
No? 6
Mark?
years. Quick.
I'll go 6 years and 1 month, Sue.
Ethan?
20 years.
7.2 years,
Look at
people.
that. Look at
Both
that.
$5 and $10 bills have shorter lifespans, under 6. Average 100 bill, 24 years.
Ooh.
We don't
All
have
right,
them.
there you go. That's Sue's News wrapping on a Wednesday afternoon. We're going to talk about the Washington Post layoffs with John Ziegler after Fox Business.
I'm Dan Loney with Your Money Now. The Washington Post has announced significant layoffs into the hundreds today. Approximately one-third of employees were impacted. Editor-in-chief Matt Murray called the move a strategic reset to position the publication for the future. Among the moves, the sports desk is being shuttered. There's restructuring of local coverage, and it's suspending its daily podcast, Post Reports. Wall Street stocks were mixed today. Dow Industrial average up 260 points at 49,501. NASDAQ was off 351, and the S&P 500 down by 35. President Trump had a call today with Chinese President Xi about the two sides preparing for an April summit in China. Part of the discussion was China increasing the amount of soybeans it buys from the U.S. Another part of the deal with Taiwan and governing of that territory. Again, the market's mixed with the Dow Industrial average up 260 points. That's Your Money Now.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.
.433, this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly, heating, air conditioning, electrical, and plumbing. I got a pair of Black Crowes tickets for a show at the Amphitheater on July 25th, up for grabs later this hour. This happened earlier today on a Zoom call. If you were an employee of the Washington Post, you might not be an employee of the Washington Post. This is Matt Murray, the executive editor, making the announcement.
First, we will be closing the sports department in its current form. We plan to retain several reporters to join features and cover sports as a cultural and societal phenomenon, as well as several folks to staff the print sports section. This is obviously a uniquely and incredibly difficult decision. Our sports coverage is often superb. Our sports writers are among the most talented in our business. Sports has a very proud legacy at the Post. Unfortunately, we are grappling and have been with just major changes in the way sports news is delivered, shared, and experienced across the industry.
So then after the Zoom call, people were told they'd get an email to be notified whether they still have a job, and about 300 people were told they do not have a job. They have cut about 30% of the staff, a lot of international and sports coverage, as you just heard there from Mr. Murray. John Ziegler back with me this afternoon, the co-host of the podcast, The Death of Journalism. Very curious about your thoughts about all this today. I mean, this was being telegraphed for a long time, actually. We knew cuts were coming. The rumor about the sports department had been out there for a couple of weeks as well, John. But what are your thoughts about this? I don't have a lot of empathy for the Washington Post based on the style of journalism that they've practiced here, but most of these publications do the same thing, so it's hard to signal them out.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and that has me conflicted here because I'm a guy who grew up as a sports fan, was a sportscaster early in my life, went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., worked with a lot of Washington Post legends during that time period, covering Georgetown basketball, read the Washington Post every single day. The Washington Post, especially the sports section, was one of the best in the history of the country. And now it's gone, and I think there's something to be mourned there. I think there's something to be lost. But you've already implied that some, if not most, of the blame goes to the Washington Post and entities like it that have lost the public's trust. They stopped doing a good job. They became activists. They lost a lot of their audience. The business model completely flipped on them. And now they have an owner, Jeff Bezos. And look, I'm as capitalistic as anybody, and I realize the Washington Post is not making any money. But if Jeff Bezos can't afford to have a loss leader and a tax write-off like the Washington Post to keep it going in some sort of substantial form, then who possibly can? I mean, this is insignificant in his overall balance sheet. So I really don't even have any sympathy for Jeff Bezos. I don't think that this is the right decision. If you're going to take over a legacy media institution like the Washington Post, I do think there's some responsibility there that Jeff Bezos is not undertaking. And the community of Washington, D.C. is going to lose a lot. Let me mention one thing that may not be obvious to people, but to me this is a huge deal because I've spent a lot of my life around high school sports, coaching high school sports, doing a book about high school football team, covering high school football for local TV stations. One of the greatest inspirations, and I'm sure you remember this era, Mark, for a young kid, whether it was sports or anything else, was having your name in the local newspaper, or God forbid, maybe your photo in the local newspaper. How many careers in sports and otherwise were inspired by that moment or that desire to get your name in the newspaper? And now in the nation's capital, that will never happen again.
Yeah, so I can almost, and I saw your tweet about this, and I totally get that, and I think that's a good point. It's a situation where I almost separate what the news division is doing and what the sports division is doing. They're two separate entities. I'm sad about the sports because all those folks who are out there, and you and I have many friends that are in the swamp and live in the D.C. area who are fans of the Nationals or the Commanders or whatever, and they will not get that sports coverage. Now, the New York Times also did something along these lines, but what they did is they purchased this publication called The Athletic, and that's how they cover sports these days. So I don't know if there's an option for the Washington Post to still have regional coverage of sports through a different model or not. You would think that would be something they would want.
I don't know. You sent me a very interesting tweet from one of the reporters that lost their job, Will Hobson, which had a real impact on me for two very different reasons. First of all, Will was complaining about losing his job, which I get, but then he went through some of his goals and some of the best stories that he's most proud of. And in his post, he described his job as basically trying to threaten billionaires or basically make billionaires tremble, was the quote. Yeah. Making billionaires tremble, which is an awfully odd mission statement for a sports reporter, especially, Mark, when you consider what was the last great quote-unquote achievement of the Washington Post sports section, and Will Hobson was part of this. It was intimidating a billionaire, Dan Snyder, into changing the Washington Redskins nickname and eventually being forced to sell the team. That's the legacy of the Washington Post. If your goal is to make billionaires tremble and you're a liberal activist activist, not a reporter, you end up having things like the Washington Redskins stupidly being forced to change their nickname, and some guy being forced to, even if he was a jackass, I don't care, he was forced to sell the team, and I don't think the Redskins or the NFL are better for it. So I found that to be very interesting. I also have dealt with Will Hobson quite a bit on the Penn State Joe Paterno, Jerry Sandusky story, and I consider him, after hours and hours of conversation with him, to be an imbecile. So I really have no sorrow over him losing his job.
Well, that's why I shared that one, John, because I thought it was so weird. The specific tweet read, some personal news, I'm among today's Washington Post layoffs. It was a dream, 11-year run as an investigative reporter focused on sports, making billionaires tremble or at least mildly annoying them and their lawyers. I thought that was bizarre for him to include that in his proud accomplishments of being a journalist at the Washington Post. So not a lot of empathy there.
They view themselves as activists.
Yes.
Like he's an activist, and that's why I mentioned the Redskins thing.
Oh, I think, well, so that's where I kind of also, maybe you can't separate the news and the sports division because, look, we've had that here. I've said this about the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which, by the way, John, it's just become a terrible newspaper. And it's sad for St. Louis because I believe in local journalism. But even our sports department, and you and I have talked about this so much, I just don't get. Someone's going to have to do a big research experiment on what makes these sports journalists so freaking woke and lefty. I don't get it.
I have thought about this for most of my career because that was one of the things that shocked me the most when I went from sports to a more political media career. Obviously, as a conservative, I knew there would be bias, and there's always been bias. But I'm telling you, for some reason, if you took the average mainstream media person in sports and compared them politically to the average mainstream media person in news or politics, I think the sports person is to the left of the political person.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah, and that's why it's so weird.
Well, my theory on this, it's not a full blown. I'm not sure about this, but I think the simplest explanation is the race angle. Sports, especially the most popular sports, have become dominated by black athletes, right? That's who you need access to. In the liberal mind, that means you acquiesce to whatever they want, and that you don't do anything that might upset them, which I think is actually racist to begin with. But I think the fact that race has become such an integral part, especially in the modern history of sports, that's a lot of what's driving this. Now, there's probably other reasons, too, philosophically. I mean, Syracuse University is where a lot of these people come from. That might have something to do with it. But there's no question, and Will Hobson is a good example of it, that liberal bias is more pronounced in sports than probably any other entity in the media.
So, John, there was a piece that was written by John Sexton on Hot Air. I'm going to have to trust his numbers. This kind of shocked me that there really are only 4 newspapers in the country that have subscribers of more than 1 million people. The Washington Post, 2.2. That was before today. USA Today, 2.27 to 2.6. That surprised me, by the way. That's digital and print. The Wall Street Journal, 3.7 total subscribers. 3 million are digital. And then the New York Times, 10.3, dominated by digital. So why is the New York Times able to succeed and make money, and the Washington Post seemingly failed at every step? What's any theory there?
Well, I think the New York Times embraced digital better and faster. I think that New York City has a stronger base of just look at the populations of the cities themselves, right? If you look at the education level, if you look at the economic levels, if you look at the pure population, the New York Times base, as well as their brand, I think is wider than the Washington Post. Yeah. Washington Post is looked at mostly as a political newspaper because it's Washington, D.C. I think the New York Times has the perception that it covers everything. And, for a lot of people across the country, the New York Times is still the paper of record. You go to the Wall Street Journal for economic news. You go maybe to the Washington Post for political news. But the New York Times is still the entity that gives you everything. Unfortunately, I think we're heading for a world where those are really the only papers that still exist. I think local is pretty much dead.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, our local paper, I don't know how they survive. I don't know how they continue to survive. So where does that leave us? Because I do believe in good local journalism, and we're just not getting it that much. And there are stories that are slipping by us, I'm convinced, when it comes to fraud and, waste and abuse and all these things that we've had so many people indicted here in the city of St. Louis because journalism has uncovered some of these things. So that's going away.
Well, you mentioned an incredibly important issue, which is that the number one or one of the main reasons that local journalism is important is to keep local people accountable. If you don't have a watchdog, then the criminals are going to run wild. And it's not a coincidence that in Minnesota and here in California, where you have no legitimate journalism, fraud has run wild. It's direct correlation and causation. And so now that we're living in a world where the watchdog is going to be put to sleep in many big cities, look out, because there's nothing going to be stopping this. And then there's all sorts of implications to this. And I think it's one of the worst things that has happened because of the internet. Everyone knew this was inevitable because of the internet, but it's been exaggerated and accelerated recently, especially since the business model has exploded. And so I don't have an answer to this. I mean, to me, the closest thing I have to an answer is, hey, Jeff Bezos, maybe take one for the damn team.
Well, I mean, maybe he could have done that, but let's say he even does that. This is where I get concerned. I have a 29 and a 26-year-old son. They're both about to be 26 and 29, all right? And then I got my 11-year-old, and that's a different story. They don't look at newspapers. They don't watch traditional news, right? So, and that scared, it always has kind of scared the hell out of me. But, you're getting information on TikTok and Saturday Night Live and wherever else. So, just the amount of information and accurate information that people are going to have into the future because of all this, that concerns me, John. It really does. Even though so much of it is lies anyway. I don't know.
Well, see, I get that there's bias and lies, but at least there used to be some semblance of substance. Give me at least some semblance of substance, even if it has bias and some untruths and some activism. Today, we're now heading to a world where a 15-second TikTok video might have more impact than a whole book written by an expert on a topic. I mean, we are living in a very strange time where attention spans are minuscule, where substance means nothing, where being a true expert means nothing, celebrity is everything, and the death of journalism in general and local journalism in particular is the ultimate proof as well as the result of that.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, on the celebrity part, I just have to ask you, don't you love the Billie Eilish story from the other night? Isn't that one of your favorites this week?
I did see that, and it definitely made me chuckle because I was horrified by the Grammys. I thought the Grammys was one of the worst things I'd ever seen on television. That's really saying a lot. I mean, because I think the Grammys are kind of a microcosm of where we're headed as a society and how Trump fans especially are delusional that the culture has somehow changed because he won one election. I think it's going to get way worse. Way, way worse, almost because of the political situation we're in, because now liberals feel like it's their obligation to push back with everything they have, and that insanity was in full bloom at the Grammys.
Absolutely. They have to lead the resistance, unfortunately. Zig, great to catch up. Thanks for this afternoon. I appreciate it. Take care.
We've got an accident eastbound 6440 as you approach 270. They've got the right lanes blocked, and that, of course, is creating a delay behind it. I had someone also tell me, watch out on the outer road to get onto 270. I think he's talking about the exit lanes. So if you're in that area, expect a delay. Right now it goes back near 141. Now, westbound 6440, we've got an accident past Clarkson, and that's causing a delay. And it's already a slow go westbound on 6440, approaching Kings Highway out through McCausland. 70 westbound, pockets of moderate volume, Jennings Station Road, past the airport, and again at Wentzville. But eastbound 64 is also a slow go at Big Bend. And there's some moderate volume headed for the Poplar Street Bridge, but it's not bad. Southbound 55, slow-moving traffic south of Arsenal down through Bates as you head into the construction zone there. If you're headed into Illinois, things look good on the Poplar. This report brought to you by Barron Mirror Glass and Doors. Simply the finest when it comes to mirror glass and shower doors. You can't find better quality, prices, or service. They have the basics all the way up to the elite. Barron Mirror Glass and Door can't be beat. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
That guy right there, Mark Cox, and I, and also Annie, will all be at the Doubletree in Chesterfield, right off 64 West and Chesterfield Parkway, on Tuesday, February 17th at 6:30 p.m. It is the first in a series of seminars that we do each and every year with a great sponsor of 97.1 FM Talk and all of our shows, the official financial planner. That's Thomas Helbig and his nephew, Bob Kershaw, Bob's wife, Tammy. It's a family-owned and operated operation. They'd love to see you. We would love to see you that night. If you're worried about retirement, you want a different strategy where they're going to teach you how to safely link to the market, locking in your gains. Well, this is a great opportunity, especially in a group setting. You might be more comfortable going in one-on-one, and there absolutely is no obligation. What can it hurt to explore a little different philosophy, especially when inflation is taking a lot of your savings away, and we are in uncertain economic times. So make your reservation. These are free events. They only last about an hour and 15 minutes, so quick in and out. We're going to get together on the 17th. Register at retirementkey.com for the Retirement Advisory Group. I got some tickets to give away for the Black Crowes, who are coming on the 25th of July to the amphitheater. If you'd like to go, Whiskey Myers opening up. Should be a fine summer concert night. Caller number 4 on the contest line right now. Ethan will take your call. 314-241-9797. You're a winner if you're caller number 4 from Live Nation. They were generous enough to offer us the tickets. And this is your chance to win. I got more tickets to give away tomorrow and Friday, if I'm keeping track of the days correctly, which means today is Wednesday, right? It's not an easy thing
correct.
to do. Have you, I haven't really covered this at all. Have you covered or at least paid any attention to the Netflix acquisition or possible acquisition of Warner? And then, of course, you have, a separate move by Paramount, who are trying to get this deal done as well. So it's a big merger that's being scrutinized by lawmakers. So what happened yesterday, Sue, is they had some antitrust hearings on Capitol Hill. Ted Sarandos, who is the co-chief executive of Netflix, and some other folks were there answering questions. Now, to a certain extent, I support some of this because I understand that the federal government has a role in antitrust, and you want to make sure, it's so funny. We go to this situation where we have monopolies. I guess I would use, AT&T or Ma Bell as an example.
Yeah.
And they all get broken up because they're monopolies, and then basically it comes full circle, and then we have a monopoly again. And essentially that's what's happening in entertainment. You have all these streaming companies out there that have their level of successes, and then the big behemoth in Netflix wants to take them over. So the question would be, if Netflix, acquires Warner, and by the way, there's a little difference here in what they're trying to do, because Sarandos was being asked about combining Netflix with Warner and then HBO. So they would have HBO.
Oh, geez.
But in the other situation, they wouldn't have CNN, though. But CNN would not be a part of this. This is where it gets a little different. Netflix would get HBO Max, and it would not buy the cable assets, which include CNN and TNT.
This gets so confusing.
It does. Paramount is offering to buy all parts of the company, and they've gone directly to the Warner Brothers shareholders, and they want them to vote against the Netflix bid. So Netflix then modifies its offer. They're agreeing to pay for the studio in cash rather than cash in stock, which is a better deal for those being compensated. So yesterday on Capitol Hill, here's Ted Cruz, Senator Cruz, asking some questions.
Are we right now on stolen land?
I have no idea the history of this land, of where we're sitting today.
Nor do I, Senator.
So that speaks volumes that neither of you are willing to say, hell no, we're not on stolen land. And I will say at the Grammys, when you see an entertainer say, nobody is illegal while we're on stolen land, and then you see entertainers leap to their feet clapping so excitedly at the notion that America's fundamentally illegitimate, it starts to convey that the entertainment world is deeply corrupt. And I will point out that same singer who says no one is illegal on stolen land promptly went back to her $14 million mansion, and somehow that stolen land she wasn't concerned about, just the United States of America.
Obviously, he's talking about Billie Eilish, and the focus here for Mr. Sarandos and others is, hey, if we give you the ability to have all of this control of this basically new monopoly in Hollywood, you're going to keep stuffing woke content down our throats. We don't like that as Republicans, right? That's basically what he's saying.
How are people at home, how should they feel even remotely confident that if this merger happens, the combined entity would not simply be a propaganda outlet pushing one particular political view with much greater market power than you have now?
Well, sir, we would fail. We would fail pushing a political view or propaganda. We deliver entertainment to consumers. Our consumers see our business pretty much the way they see America. About 40% conservative, about 40% liberal, about 20% don't know. And but when they turn on TV, they're tuned in to be entertained. And if we fail to entertain them by trying to promote propaganda or anything other than entertainment, we fail.
Okay, so I'm going to agree with that. And here's what I'm going to also say. I don't like the path that some Republicans are going down here, because these are private companies. Well, they could be public companies, publicly traded, but they can do what they want with their customer base, and their customers can decide whether or not they want the content or not. Now, if you're a Netflix subscriber, as I am, or HBO, and you don't like some of the woke content out there, well, you have a decision. You can not watch the woke content. That's what I do, and watch the content that you prefer, which is what I do, or you could not subscribe to the service. I get the fear of the monopoly and all that, but I would prefer if Republican members of the House and Senate kind of stay out of that as much as possible. Let the market work this self out, and I think that the consumer will be happy in the end. So I think a little bit too nanny state from some of the Republicans, and obviously they're piggybacking off of the moment at the Grammys and trying to make some political points on that as well. More tickets to give away for the Black Crowes later this week. We got a 5 o'clock hour with Duane Patterson kicking things off right after Fox News.
Watch out for an accident eastbound 6440 approaching 270. It's on the right shoulder, and traffic was stacked up behind it. It's back past 141, so it'll take a minute to unwind. Now, westbound 48 lines up approaching Kings Highway out through McCaws onto Highway N in pockets out through 70. 70 eastbound is jammed at 370, but westbound isn't bad. Moderate volume at Jennings Station Road past the airport. 55 is really slow headed into the construction zone, especially when you get down toward Bates. If you're headed into Illinois on the bridges, though, we look great. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative. Doesn't it feel like you hear every now and then, man, I wish I would have known that before I retired, or I wish they would have taught us this in school? Because, frankly, we know to save for retirement, but then what? How do you know that money is going to last? You have got to have a written retirement plan in place. And what I like to do is understand how things work, which is why I like financial and tax architects, because they agree. And what they do is put on a class. It's called Retirement Planning 101. It's just one night. It's 2.5 hours. It's free, but you have to register. And they walk you through some of this stuff, so you actually get a handle on what you should be doing. And then if you'd like, they will sit down with you, look at your stuff, and tailor a program just for you. But first, register and go to a class. FTA-RIA.com. FTA-RIA.com. Just going to a class will make you feel so much better about retirement.
leaving. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. Border Czar Tom Homan says there will be a drawdown of immigration agents in Minnesota.
Citing what he calls unprecedented cooperation from counties in Minnesota, allowing ICE agents to take custody of criminal illegal immigrants directly from jails. Border Czar Tom Homan says that means less officers are needed on the streets.
And as a result of the need for less law enforcement officers to do this work in a safer environment, I have announced effective immediately we will draw down 700 people effective today.
Homan saying a complete drawdown will be contingent on the end of illegal and threatening activities against ICE that we're seeing in the Twin Cities. That President Trump made a promise to the American people on mass deportations.
And we have not directed otherwise.
Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
But Homan did not give a timeline for the pullout. This comes as congressional Democrats and some Republicans are calling for reforms to ICE as part of a deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Authorities in Arizona say they still have no suspect in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie. She was last seen Saturday night and was reported missing Sunday morning. TMZ and local media report getting a ransom note.
A lot's going to be based on what exactly that note says and whether or not it matches up with what information the lead detectives have.
Pima County Chief of Detectives Fabian Pacheco, the sheriff's office has said they believe she was taken against her will and they consider her home to be a crime scene. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says talks between the U.S. and Iran set for Friday in Oman.
He is pushing back on some of the more erratic demands that the Iranians have been making the last 24 hours. One thing they proposed yesterday, they said when they sit down with the U.S. on Friday, they only want to talk about the nuclear issue. Rubio says that's probably not going to work.
Fox's Jillian Turner. America's listening to Fox News.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Terms apply.
Welcome back to Winter Hack Radio, the place for clever hacks to survive the season. Icy driveway? Well, try spreading sand or birdseed to help with traction. Snowy puppy paws? Well, grab a whisk, brush it off, done. Catch COVID-19? Well, just get...
Actually, there's no hack for COVID-19. But if you test positive, prescription medications for COVID exist. Ask your doctor if they're right for you. Visit PfizerForAll.com to learn more. Sponsored by Pfizer.
You know, one of the other things that I did not talk about earlier with the layoffs at the Washington Post is, and this is, I think, hitting some people closer to home. MLB let some folks go. John Denton among them, who was one of the MLB reporters. He was laid off today. And, you know, that's a tough situation because you got spring training just a few days away. And I don't know John personally. I don't know really about his work. I know that Ethan's a big fan and other people are fans of how he conducts himself related to, you know, the Cardinals in covering sports. I think he's a pro, and he lost his job today as well. So obviously, tough day in the world of journalism. Now, I wanted to just briefly start with the Savannah Guthrie story. Just early reporting today from KTLA in Los Angeles was a little confusing. I tweeted this out. I figured that they were a good source. They indicated that the brother-in-law, so the sister of Savannah Guthrie's husband, was a suspect, but that kind of went away very quickly and then was denied. Now, CBS sat down with the sheriff out there.
None of the camera images have revealed to us anything of substantive nature. No.
Really?
No.
Anything?
No, it only goes so far back.
And so we're giving it to those camera makers and saying, can you do something more with this?
And then we had reports yesterday from TMZ that there was a ransom note.
Is there anything in that note that seems credible at this moment that you're giving weight to?
The entire note. That's what I would tell you.
The entire note.
When the note comes to us, we look, it's like any piece of evidence. You give it to us. You give us a lead. We're going to look at every aspect of that lead and work it as a lead.
Well, we still don't have a lot of answers this afternoon, and boy, that situation is not looking very good to find her alive. I hope I'm wrong about that. Duane Patterson is back with us from hotair.com, the host of the Duane's World podcast. That is a bizarre story, isn't it? I don't know what the hell is going on out there. How are you?
I am doing great. It is 90 degrees where I'm at. I'm about ready to hop on my bicycle and ride home in 90-degree heat here in Southern California.
It's really 90 degrees out there?
It is
Wow.
90 degrees outside. It is a remarkable winter day here in Southern California.
Now, what kind of bike do you have, just out of curiosity? Are we doing a road bike? Are we doing a hybrid? Are we doing a mountain bike? What do we got there?
No, we got an e-bike.
An e-bike. So you're cheating, I see. So what are you doing? Just basically, why don't you just go on and ride someone's, back seat and ride around, town that way? You get as much exercise.
Well, here's fact check true. When I go to and from work, I'm at full power. I do pedal, but I'm at full power, and I've got bike trails from my studio where we do Hugh show to where I live. There's bike trails all but like a third of a mile, and so I can actually get home quicker on a bike trail than I can this time of day on normal traffic.
Well, and look at your carbon footprint, Duane. Look how small that carbon footprint is.
Well, now I'm going to hop in my truck tomorrow because you remind me of that. I feel like I'm not contributing enough.
By the way, the e-bikes, I mock a little bit, but I have ridden them, and they're quite nice. And I always tell this story. So I used to be one of those annoying people on the road with spandex on a road bike that drivers hated, right?
I don't go there, yeah.
Well, I did that for a long time, and I was in really the best shape of my life when I was doing it. But it became a little unsafe, and then my daughter came along, and it just became difficult because I was one of those guys that on Saturday and Sunday I'm on the bike for 3 to 4 hours, and then, you can't do stuff with family. Plus, I wanted to play golf, and you can't do both that. But I always share this story because I wish I would have had an e-bike on this day. When I first got my my first real Trek road bike, this goes back about 20 years, and I used to vacation. A lot of St. Louis folks go up to a beautiful area in Wisconsin called Door County, which is northeast of Green Bay. And it's lovely up there. And it's very, going back to your point about the heat, when it's 100 degrees and humidity up there, it's beautiful. So I get this road bike, and I'm so excited. It's a brand new Trek. I'm like, I'm going to ride this thing. I got my little GPS on there to, know how fast I'm going and all that stuff. And I get on the bike, and I ride probably 10 miles across the peninsula. And, dude, I'm like flying. I'm like going 22, 23. I'm like, this is unbelievable, this bike. Wow, I can't believe it. Well, then I turned around, Duane. And what I realized is I had no sense whatsoever at that point in my life of the wind and how it would affect you. And when I turned around to go the opposite direction on that peninsula, I could only go about, and I'm not exaggerating, 7 or 8 miles an hour. I thought I was going to have to call my wife to get picked up, but the cell service was bad. So if I had an e-bike, that's where the e-bike can kind of save you.
It is.
You get a little tired or you need to go up a hill, you click that thing in, and it saves you. But I certainly wish I would have had one on that day because it was very painful.
And hello, Sue. Thanks for backing my play here. Yes, what the e-bikes do for old people like us is they let you climb hills and flatten them out, and you can go a little bit longer range than you would normally go on a bicycle. You can still pedal, do your normal thing, but if you extend yourself and you get caught either having to go against the wind or you're farther away from home than you really want to be, you've always got the battery to get back home.
And Duane, if you don't want to use it, it's just a heavy bike and a good workout.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I had fun. I've been on them a couple of times, and I've had fun. So I was just kind of teasing you. All right, let's talk about the Washington Post and the layoffs there. Hard for me to have a ton of empathy for the news division in particular. I think I feel a little differently about them ditching sports altogether. But this has been a long time coming. There's been warnings about the profitability. They're bleeding money over there at the Washington Post. Now, you can make a case, and some have, even on this show today, that Jeff Bezos has enough money to just take a loss on something like this and still put out a product. He chose to go in another direction.
That he has
no,
to,
he doesn't have to.
Post.
I'm not saying that he does have to. I'm saying some people have, I've heard, I had a guest that said that today, and I've had people online saying that. But no, he's got no obligation to flush money down the toilet. toilet more than anyone else.
I mean, look, Elon Musk bought X, right? And he didn't want it to lose money, so he made changes. So it's actually doing all right. And he laid a bunch of people off. Everybody, preened and whined and had a cow. But nowhere in there was there an obligation that because you buy something, you have to run it at a loss forever because it's the home of all things progressive.
Right, exactly.
Now, as far as losing the sports, all the local DC teams are not going to have a paper that does their daily sports coverage. Okay, fine. I'm sure you can find stuff online that will write about that. I'm sure there will be podcasts that deal with the sports teams of your choice, and you will be able to get your news and your Capitals update, your Wizards update, they don't call them Redskins. What do they call them? The Maroon team. What do they call them?
The Commandos, right?
The Commandos.
Oh no, the Commanders,
yes.
something like
Commanders.
that. Yes.
Go Commandos. Yes. So the deal with the Post, if you are concerned at all about the loss of the Post, and you're wearing your black armband and you think all is lost, let me twist the knife a little bit. Let me make it make sense for you.
Please do.
You know who Neil Young is?
Of course, and I'm not a big fan, but yes, I'm aware.
Neil Young has thrown his sizable heft into the Washington Post debate. As of today, as of this afternoon, you will no longer, no matter how much you want to, you will no longer be allowed to purchase and or listen to a Neil Song written piece on the Amazons because Jeff Bezos owns it, and that's how Neil Young is fighting back at what Jeff Bezos is doing to the Washington Post.
He pulled his music from Amazon Music
from
as
Amazon.
a protest. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, good for you, Neil, right? I tend to be on the Leonard Skinner side of Neil Young, to be honest with you.
So I'm sure that everybody over at YouTube, where every single song ever recorded is
available.
on YouTube,
right,
and available for free, I'm sure they will just be heartbroken that you can't go throw money and give Jeff Bezos an extra 30 cents on a Neil Young song.
You ever been fired in your career, Duane?
I have.
So have I. Twice. Been fired twice. But what I wasn't able to do, and this is what I had to indicate today online, is, man, when I was fired the last time, it's been 20 years now, I didn't have the X format to whine about the reality of being in journalism because I saw this guy, Sam Fortier, saying, I'm part of the mass layoffs at the Washington Post. I'm sad and angry. We all want to keep doing the work, but from now I want to document the reality of being in journalism today. Okay, well, the reality of journalism is very different than it used to be. I hate to tell you, I wouldn't recommend any young people go into journalism at all. But what he's upset about is he's not able to push his, ideology down the throats of the American people. That's what they're most upset about, I think, today at the Washington Post.
Absolutely right. There is a reporter at the Free Beacon. I think her name is Jessica Cortescue. I think is how you pronounce her name.
Cortescue. Yeah, Jessica's a guest every once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, she had a piece today saying, I'm here to let you know that I received my termination notice earlier from the Washington Post. And in light of that, the Democracy in Darkness T-shirts are running low in XXX, XXX, and quadruple X. But we do have the mediums and the smalls available if you want to order now.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty funny.
But I don't, in all seriousness, I don't want, and this is where I'm conflicted, because I think journalism is dead. Like real journalism, good journalism is dead. But I subscribe to the Washington Post, and I still see a lot of articles in there that are worthwhile, that are worth digesting, that are worth consuming. So I don't know where all of this takes us with journalism overall. We got a crappy newspaper here in St. Louis, but unfortunately it's not getting better, and we're not getting better local coverage of issues that deserve to be covered. We have an okay sports section. It's gotten pared down as well. But it's just a loss for people, and younger people are consuming news a lot differently than any of us did. So there's going to be changes.
Why did the free press work?
Well, that's a good question. And, the free press I love. And I think it worked because it dared to do something different. That's why I like it.
And it let journos that used to be at the bigs have kind of a free rein to do what they want to do and do actual reporting and do actual stuff. and they tried to steer away from a lot of the politicizing and, actually report the news. Eli Lake is a phenomenal reporter, and he used to be with all the bigs. And now he's got an avenue with the Free Press to write columns, and he can do a podcast out of there called Breaking History, and it's a phenomenal podcast. All the people that are of talent at the Washington Post, and I'm not saying everybody was talented, everybody was great, everybody was awesome. I'm not going to go that road. There were some that were good. There were some that are not so good that are being laid off in the sports department. You're telling me if there's a demand for Washington-based sports coverage, if there's a demand for baseball coverage or whatever else, the people that were the best there, they're not going to end up on their feet somewhere writing for somebody. Somebody's not going to see a niche market for that and say, hey, you know what, I can put something together. You don't think the market's going to eventually correct and adapt?
Well, I think it will, because I can even offer on a smaller basis. I even think I threw this as an option out earlier today. If our St. Louis Post-Dispatch just closed up, which wouldn't really cause a lot of problems, I would be, and I think most people in our community here would be most upset that the sports department wasn't available. But I guarantee you that the good people from the Post, Derek Gould amongst them, that's the one I would put at the top, as did Bernie Miklas, who's a former columnist with the Post. They went out there, created podcasts, a website, and people are using and paying for that content. So
They'll
yes,
flock to it.
there are options for
Of
people
course.
to discover this stuff. And I think they'll figure it out. I am a little, I love your answer. I've asked a couple of people, why does the New York Times do so much better than the Washington Post? I mean, the numbers aren't even close. It's like 8 million more subscribers to the New York Times than the Washington Post.
Well, for one, they've just got such a larger area, an area of coverage. I mean, between the 5 boroughs, you've got 10, 12 million people there.
Right. Yeah.
You don't have that in D.C. It's just not that big of a town in the overall scheme of things. The district has a lot of people that visit it. It's got a metric excrement ton of lobbyists that take up residence there and work there.
I like that line.
Well, we are FCC compliant.
Yes.
But Virginia's got their own thing. Maryland's got their own thing. And so you don't actually have a ton of people that live in D.C. Now, because it's the political capital, everybody wants a copy of D.C. for their national coverage. But when Jim Vandehei and Mike Allen left the Washington Post to go start Politico, when Politico was 4 Politicos ago, before they went into the tank and went hard left, and then they went off to do Axios, and there's other avenues that you knew that was the end. That was when the bell was tolling for the Washington Post when Politico started, because the meat and potatoes of what anybody cared about the Washington Post nationally was their political coverage, because that's the nation's capital.
And you bring that up about Politico. It's so sad what happened to them, because that was somewhat of a dependable source for a while until, as you indicated, they went crazy lefty as well. Let me squeeze a couple of questions in here before I let you go about the politics of the day. What's interesting is this is kind of a slow news week in the world of Trump and immigration, all that, isn't it?
It is, because all of a sudden Tom Homan came in and cleaned things up. They're still doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then he said, you know what? Because they're cooperating with us now and they've actually turned over a bunch of people, we don't need 700 agents banging on everybody's windows anymore. So we're going to start to reallocate resources. And, Mayor Fry and Governor Walz can preen all they want, but the bottom line is they cooperated.
Yeah,
they actually started turning over prisoners that they were detaining. And so it's mission accomplished. Tom Homan's like, okay, we're done here. We're going to move on to the next place.
That's going to piss off the protesters, though, because they still want to keep, they're doing, it was interesting. I saw one video today where they were literally driving in circles in an intersection like it was a roundabout, but it wasn't a roundabout, trying to block the ICE vehicles, but the ICE vehicles were one step ahead of them. They went to the next location and they completely did a head fake. So, some of this stuff is just nonsense and it's embarrassing and good Lord.
The other reason why it's such a quote unquote slow news day is because of the 800-pound gorilla in the corner. And that is what is going on with Iran and when's it going to start. And it's no longer really an if, it's a
win.
a win.
Yeah, it's a win.
We talked. I know Selena Zito. I know we're short on time. Selena Zito is a mutual friend. She's a dear, dear friend of mine. I know she's on your show quite
all
a bit
the time.
too, right?
Yep.
She was on Hugh's show earlier today, and she was late hooking up with Zoom and getting going. She said, "I'll be there in a second. I just got off the phone with POTUS." So she had just been talking to Trump.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so what'd you talk to him about? Well, I can't tell you. Okay, so what do you think about what's going on with Iran? Well, I can tell you, Selena says, that it will be just like Venezuela when it happens. Not if it happens, when it happens.
Yeah.
So she's confirming in her own inimitable way that, yes, they talked about it, and two, it's going to happen. I mean, they're sending the George H.W. Bush carrier group now. It's on its way to join the Lincoln group. So we're going to have two carrier groups there with all the accoutrements that go along with it. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, no,
now,
I think you're right about that.
I don't know when, but that's what's causing everything else to kind of get short shrift because everybody's waiting for the big event to happen.
Duane Patterson with HotAir.com and also the host of the Duane's World podcast. Great stuff this afternoon. As always, we'll see what happens. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
You got it. Thanks,
all right,
man.
take care.
If you are leaving downtown on westbound 70, it's not too bad. We've got a little bit of moderate volume at Jennings Station Road. It's that sort of thing. Moderate volume in pockets that heads out toward the 64 split. 6440 is slower, and it's jammed approaching Kings Highway in pockets out through 270. There was an accident really close to Clarkson, some slow-moving traffic there, and Highway N on out. 44 westbound slow in the Shrewsbury area, so if you're headed through there, it's a slow go, but it's fine now at right at 270. Southbound 55 slowing south of Arsenal through Bates. Things look great if you're headed into Illinois and on the Illinois side in general. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Well, let me talk about Banner Construction, a great company here in St. Louis. I've gotten to know Bill Kaufman as a friend over the years and Sam P., and they're really proud of what they do for their customers here in St. Louis. And they work with the best products. And that's one thing that happens when you have a reputation. They started back in 1993, started doing home remodeling project year after year, built a better reputation. Now they've been around 30 years plus, dealing with Pella replacement windows, putting those in your home, and at an expert level, because when you deal with the best products, you have to be the best, and that's exactly what they do at Banner Construction. So if you're looking for premium windows, and windows come in a variety of shapes, sizes, certainly price points, all Pella replacement windows come with the Pella Care guarantee for your peace of mind. They're beautiful from the inside and out, and you don't want to trust a project like that outside of a certified Pella window contractor, and that's what you get at Banner Construction. Same thing with the James Hardy fiber cement siding. Get with Banner today at 569-1050 or the website bannerconstruction.com. I every day I have audio, Sue, that I never get to. And, this is one of the reasons I do Audio Cut of the Day is because I like to gather, some of the audio and share things that may have popped throughout one day versus another. And I always have great options, but then there's stuff that, might be in a little bit of a different category. So this will not be Audio Cut of the Day, but you tell me if this is not, just nuts. And I understand. I certainly have empathy for people who have addiction issues because I've had those myself. And I know people in my family who've gone through addiction, and it can be devastating. But that's when you think about this story, that's what I think about. So there's a guy in Colorado, in Westminster, Colorado. He's driving erratically, and the police pull him over. I'm going to play you what the body cam audio sounded like. The driver was in an area last Friday, and the officer pulls him over because he thinks something's weird. So just listen to the whole episode here.
Hi there. Hello. I'm Officer Kessler of the Westminster Police Department. Any idea why I'm stopping you today?
Because I was acting like an idiot.
Yeah, huge in that parking lot. You're lucky you didn't hit somebody. Are you sure you haven't drank any alcohol? Because I got a smell of alcohol coming from the vehicle right now.
No, sir. It's my...
Your Zins? So Zins are supposed to... They smell like alcohol, or... Okay.
I don't know what that is. He
What?
said like his Zins, Z-Y-N-S. He says the smell was from his Zins. You want to look
It's
that up?
nicotine.
Oh, okay.
Nicotine pouches.
Apparently he says that they smell like alcohol. All right.
Interesting. Would you be willing to do some voluntary roadside maneuvers today?
Yes, sir.
All right. Give me a second. You don't want to complete these? No. All right. Go ahead and put your hands behind your back. So you have 3 kids hiding in the trunk?
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
Okay. Well, now go ahead and step over here. You didn't think that would have been a good idea to say something before?
Yeah, did you hear the guy when he said that? You think
Might
that would have
have
been a
been-
good...
yeah.
He's got 3 kids in the trunk of his car, and he's driving around drunk. He failed the sobriety test. They put him in handcuffs. According to police, several bottles of alcohol were also found in the car, and the kids were taken into protective custody and then released to another family member.
Oh, my gosh.
But you don't hear stories like that very often,
Where
right?
was that?
It was in the Denver, let's see here, Westminster, Colorado.
You know what?
So-
I bet he put them in the trunk thinking, you know what? That way nobody will, it's safer for them there. They won't see that I don't have them in car seats, or nobody will see. I
don't know, because it doesn't really give you a lot of, I've read several stories. There's several versions of the story. The TV stations out there have covered this, but nobody really offers any kind of explanation as to why he thought it was a good idea to put them in the trunk.
How old were they?
I don't know. It
Okay.
doesn't say. It just says 3 kids. And you can
Holy
tell that the
cow.
officers are like, hey, you guys okay? And trying to do something that...
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that's crazy. Then I watched this on Fox while I was doing the show earlier today. Rashida Tlaib, one of the squad members, going into the halls of Congress and blowing whistles like these idiots up in Minnesota.
That's all of our residents are using right now to protect themselves in the streets. This needs to be dismantled.
Okay, which part needs to be dismantled? The part where everyone blows their whistle at the same
That'd
time?
be great.
And this is one thing I learned last week. I didn't realize there's more to it than just a signal. Okay, when they blow those whistles like that, it is disorienting to the ICE officers and to the people around. So they try to blow them as hard as they possibly can, and I think it tends to be somewhat effective. So I thought that was interesting. Another little piece of audio that's just random here. Remember when we were talking about the horse drug and everyone was blaming Trump during COVID on the ivermectin and making fun of him and, that's not something you should use for COVID. So the world is so upside down. Chris Cuomo, who's over there on News Nation causing trouble right now, and he lectured Scott Jennings a couple of weeks ago. You might remember about that. Listen to what he said.
I'll tell you something else that's going to get you a lot of hits. I am taking a, what do they call it? Like a regular dose, whatever. They're trying to build up of ivermectin. Ivermectin was a boogeyman early on in COVID.
You couldn't talk about it.
That was wrong. We were given bad information about ivermectin.
You think?
Oh,
let me remind you, Chris, that when we were given the bad information about ivermectin, you were spreading the bad information about that on CNN.
Real question is why? Everyone's going to say Joe Rogan was right. No, Joe Rogan was saying, yeah, he was right. But that's not what matters. What matters is the entire clinical community knew that ivermectin couldn't hurt you. They knew it, Patrick. I know they knew it. How do I know? Because now I'm doing nothing but talking to these clinicians who at the time were overwhelmed by COVID, and they weren't saying anything. Not that they were hiding anything, but it's cheap, it's not owned by anybody, and it's used as an antimicrobial antiviral in all of these different ways. It has been for a long time.
For malaria for over almost 20 years.
Yeah. So, and my doctor, who's now my doctor, was using it during COVID on her family and on patients, and it was working for them. So they were wrong to play scared on that.
They
didn't know that at the time, know it now, admit it now, reporting on it now. Because I think that's the job. The idea that, well, you were a vaccine proponent. Why wouldn't I have been a vaccine proponent? Now there are questions. Oh, no, but I knew at the time. No, you didn't. What you knew was that there were people telling you to be resistant to what the government was telling you to do.
So, yeah, that was you, Chris. This is amazing. And I don't have the audio. I could probably find this. But when Cuomo was at CNN, he and Don Lemon ridiculed the whole Joe Rogan thing. They just made fun of it. Lemon said people are injecting drugs for animals. And Cuomo says, and people telling them to, what person do you know about cancel culture and who's to shame? Ivermectin, some of that doesn't make sense there. A dewormer? Really? They need to be shamed. They need to be called out and shamed, brother. It's ironic that on this day where the Washington Post lost 300 reporters and we're mourning the death of journalism, that a guy that was supposedly a journalist on CNN when all this was happening didn't actually practice any journalism. And now in the aftermath, because he claims he has long COVID and he's being prescribed ivermectin, he has this, renaissance all of a sudden. Oh, yeah, maybe we should have, explained that a little bit better at the time when I was spouting nonsense off on CNN. You think so?
If you are leaving downtown, things look pretty good on westbound 70. There's a little bit of volume here and there, and one of those here and there areas is approaching Jennings Station Road, of course. Northbound 170 slowing at Airport Road. And we've got some moderate volume here and there, westbound 70, nothing too terrible. 6440 is slower. It's Kings Highway in pockets out through 270. Again at Boone's Crossing and at Highway N. Southbound 270, slow pockets of mainly moderate volume from Page down through Doherty Ferry. The innerbound southbound is pretty slow, headed for and ramping onto eastbound 64. We look fine on the Poplar Street Bridge, and southbound 55 is pretty slow, headed down toward Bates in the construction zone. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Sue, you know how we love our true crime, right?
Oh, yes.
When I say we, you and I, but like the whole country loves this
It's
stuff,
true.
right? I have a great Missouri true crime story, authored by the name of James Owen, who's going to be at Left Bank Books tomorrow, and a crazy story from the Ozarks. That's coming up next. 5:35. This portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating, Air Conditioning, Electrical, and Plumbing. All right, tomorrow on the show, Congressman Mike Bost is going to be with us. We do have a roundtable set for Friday as well. Greg Keller, who always brings the heat, and Jeff Smith, who will bring the heat from the side that is left to me on the table. We're down to like 3 panelists since Jane went to work for Catherine Hanaway, but that should be a great roundtable on Friday. We got a rare Friday appearance by Brian Kilmeade. He typically joins us Wednesday or Thursday. Every once in a while it's a Friday, and this will be Friday for Brian. I have an audio cut of the day coming up here. Really good stuff from Scott Bessent on Capitol Hill. That's coming up in just a little bit here on the show. I do want to remind folks that we have our Fish Fry Friday schedule set. We're going to get going 2 weeks from Friday at Holy Trinity Serbian Orthodox Church in the city. On the 27th, the Knights of Columbus in Cottleville. In March, the VFW Post 4105 in Florissant on March 6th. On the 13th, St. Mary Magdalene in Brentwood. On March 20th, Queen of All Saints in Oakville. And then we'll close things out on March 27th at Ott's Tavern and Fish Stand in Millstown. We've done this now. This will be the 4th year, and we've had a lot of fun. We love meeting the listeners. They come out and hang out. You can watch the roundtable live, so it's a lot of fun if you happen to be interested. Sue is not in the studio right now, but as I mentioned to her before the break, I mean, we all love our true crime stuff. Sadly, one of the reasons that, the planet, maybe not the whole planet, but the country is, fascinated by the Savannah Guthrie mom story is because it's true crime and it's a mystery and, it's bizarre. And it's an older woman that lived kind of in a remote location that just vanishes and disappears. And it looks like there's a crime scene. And anything like that, captures the imagination of the American public in really crazy ways. You see this on TV. You've seen the podcasts that have grown up. I have James Owen with us this afternoon, and he has written a book called The Wicked Among Us, Murder, Blackmail, and Book Collecting in the Ozarks. He's actually going to be at Left Bank Books tomorrow. I almost said Left Wing Books, James. Sorry, just kind of in my head. Not too far from the truth either. But anyway, Left Bank Books tomorrow night for an event for this book. How are you this afternoon? Welcome to the show.
Mark, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Well, you and I, we connected years ago because you were starting to do a little film critic work, and you had reached out about some screenings here in St. Louis. At the same time, I was kind of moving away from doing work with movies because the pandemic hit, and it kind of killed my trips to Hollywood. So are you still doing some movie stuff in mid-Missouri?
Yes, I'm still I'm still writing a column for the Columbia Daily Tribune, which is the local paper here. And I still appear on our good buddy Simon Rose's show to talk about movies from time to time.
Yeah, on BXR. And Simon and I go way back. So you reached out recently because there's this book, and anything true crime is going to kind of really connect with this show because we love it. But it's Murder, Blackmail, and Book Collecting in the Ozarks, The Wicked Among Us. So what the hell is this all about here, James?
This is a story about a guy I worked for. His name was Roland Comstock. In addition to being a lawyer down in Springfield, Missouri, he was also considered a world-renowned book collector. He had this 3-story library built onto the side of his house, dead authors at the top, living authors at the bottom. He was profiled by national and international journalists for this book collection. So he was a very eccentric guy. He was kind of a guy that was well known. He was in a very acrimonious divorce with his wife of 38 years. Ooh. And they're fighting over their house. The day that the house listing expired with the realtor is the day he was shot dead in his kitchen.
Ooh. By?
Well. So let me just first start by saying no one was ever charged criminally in this case.
Really?
That's right.
Okay.
The Greene County Sheriff's Department down in Springfield, they investigated it. They were not able to find anything beyond circumstantial evidence. However, his daughter filed a wrongful death civil suit against her mom, his ex-wife, saying she caused the death, and a jury agreed with her.
Wow.
So how did you go? Let's go back a little bit here. You worked for this guy?
I worked for this guy, yes.
In what capacity?
I was a lawyer for him.
Okay.
I had just been clerking for the appeals court in Springfield, and I was wanting to learn how to be a lawyer, and I went to go work for the weirdest lawyer in that town, as it turns out.
So in the book, The Wicked Among Us, it's not, your book is not only about, the crime and what happened, and you're trying to resolve what happened, but you're also talking about this guy in his, eccentric personality, right?
That's right. I have found that with a lot of true crime, there's not a whole lot of focus on the victim. I mean, we have more of a focus on the murderer, mainly because they're still alive. There was a trial, there was an arrest, that sort of thing. But here he had a lot of material from his life. He had been a state representative. He had had all these really unusual cases, very colorful cases. So there was a lot to work with in terms of being able to talk about him and his personality.
I got you. Do you have a solid theory in the book or in your mind on what really did happen for the murder?
Yeah, I believe that this fight over this house, this huge house that was just north of Springfield, was driving them to this extreme battle. You kind of think about the War of the Roses kind of thing. I would say it's somewhat similar to that. And when that real estate listing expired, and she was believing she was never going to see the house or get any money out of the house, I believe she drove from Oklahoma, which is where she was living at the time. There was someone who said they saw her truck at a gas station on the way there before the murder happened.
Oh, gosh.
I believe that she got there and she meant to scare him. I think she meant to threaten him, and I think that her rage just got the best of her, and I think she pulled the trigger.
Wow.
But why could they have never prosecuted that case?
Yeah, that's a good question.
The evidence they found, there was, one of the things that I learned in the research of this is that when you have a gun shooting, often you have a lack of DNA evidence. There was really no DNA at the scene of the crime, which was a challenge for investigators. There was no weapon ever found.
Yeah,
even though she had went to a gun store on the way from Oklahoma to Missouri that night.
Oh, jeez.
And I believe that she went to buy a gun that was going to replace the gun that she was going to get rid of later on.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So she's thinking even more forward than that. I see.
So
yeah, because she had this gun that she always had with her that had been given to her by a judge, and she never went anywhere without this. And so the idea that she was buying a gun that night, also circumstantial but suspicious. Her briefcase was found in the house, but there's a million stories about how that briefcase got there. And I think the other thing that I have to point out, too, is because this is such a heavily fortified house, because he lived with a pack of hybrid wolves.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that. All right, so he had pet wolves, right?
He did, yes.
I believe,
who doesn't?
Yeah,
like you do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I believe that anybody who was in that house was familiar with them or was comfortable with them. They would not have attacked whoever it was, and I believe that one of the only people
would be
could have
her.
been was her.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's crazy. Whatever happened to the book collection?
Some of it got auctioned off at Christie's. Some of it was donated to a local university in Springfield, and it's there at that university. But a lot of book collectors have it all over the place. The one book that was left out at the crime scene, his probably rarest book, I think the book that maybe he was bargaining his life for, it was his signed copy of Lord of the Flies. That's actually still in an evidence locker somewhere in the Greene County Sheriff's Department.
Interesting. That's crazy. So you're going to give the details out of the event. You're going to be here tomorrow night at Left Bank Books, correct, for a signing and a little bit of a visit. What are the details?
Yes, Left Bank Books at 6 p.m. I'm trying to think of what the address is. It's somewhere on Euclid.
It's on Euclid. That's 399 North Euclid.
Yeah, you can RSVP at their website if you just type in Left Bank Books. You can also, in addition to being there where I will talk and sign, you can also, apparently they live stream these on YouTube. So you just go there and you can go to that link, or you can RSVP, and I'd love to see you there.
That's awesome. Well, the book is called Wicked Among Us. James lives in Columbia, and I spent many years. I lived in Columbia from 1980 1983 till 1996. It was one summer I was back here in St. Louis when I was a sophomore. But I've often said, I think you're a lot younger than I am, but there were so many things that happened, James, in the period of the late 80s in particular, when I was covering news in Columbia, that were crime stories that I just have deep regrets about not writing them down, more notes down, because at the very least they could have been exceptional episodes of Law and Order or things like that. But there was and I just saw him recently, Joe Mosley, who was the prosecutor back then in the 1980s. And the one story that I always share, just because it's fascinating, and I don't even know if you know about this case. Have you ever heard the case of Ralph Davis and his wife, James?
I have not. No.
So Ralph Davis lived in Rocheport, I think it was, in the 1980s. And he was an African-American. He had a white wife, and the wife went missing. And immediately the suspicion went to Ralph Davis, the husband, right? But they could never find the body. You know, going back to your points, there was really no evidence, right? There was no evidence at all, so he couldn't be charged. But then something happened that was interesting. He had a storage locker, like one of those orange, garage door looking things, storage locker in Jeff City. And you know how they have those TV shows where they crack the locks when you don't pay? Well, they cracked the lock because he wasn't paying. And his car was in this storage unit, and it had DNA, like brain matter from his wife on the steering wheel. So then they charged him with first-degree murder. What was interesting about this is, and again, I just ran into the Joe Mosley a few months back at a football game, because I always thought that this should be, at the very least, a documentary or a movie, and it's probably bad on me for not doing it. It became, if not the first case, one of the first cases ever in this country to use DNA evidence with no body to convict someone of first-degree murder. Joe, the prosecutor, literally rebuilt the car in the courtroom at the Boone County Courthouse, and it was a fascinating trial. And he was convicted, and he was sent to death row, and he was executed. So it was a really, really weird case, but that goes back, like 40 years now.
Wow. It is really amazing that, certainly, and since then, DNA has become something that jurors and people just expect is going to be everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. Here, let me share one more weird story, because I always like sharing this one. This is weird. There was a guy who is from Kirksville, and he comes to Columbia to the Holiday Inn Executive Center for a conference for EMTs, because I think he was an EMT. And he has a video camera in his hotel room, and he is accused and on trial for raping and actually drugging a woman in the hotel room and taking advantage of him. So he's on trial. There's testimony. What I find out in the aftermath of the trial, they convict this guy, right? I'm told on good authority that you might not remember this, but Sue, you would. Back in the day when we had VHS tapes and we would record a show, let's say we're recording David Letterman or something like that, if you have a brand new tape, you can never quite get rid of those first couple of, scenes, the first two frames at the beginning, even if you record a new show. Well, he had recorded this crime, and he recorded over the tape with the Weather Channel, James. He claimed it was because he was a pilot.
Oh, my gosh.
But there were two little frames that the jury asked to see the video, and they noticed that it was from the hotel room.
Oh, my gosh.
And that's one of the reasons they convicted him.
That's great.
And how crazy of a story is that, right? Unbelievable. But we love our true crime. So anyway, have fun in St. Louis tomorrow night. You can come see us in the studio sometime, so keep in touch. But it is 7 o'clock tomorrow at Left Bank Books? 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
James, thank you so much. Again, the book is called The Wicked Among Us. And you got a publisher. You got Simon & Schuster behind this, right?
That's great.
Yeah, that's right. You can go type it in, and you can find it on there, and they have all the online sellers. You can go look it up.
Hey, keep us posted and keep in touch. Thank you, James.
I will.
All right, that's James Owen. Check out the book, The Wicked Among Us.
We have an improving commute, and if you're westbound or will be on 6440, it's mainly slow now. Hampton out through McCausland and a little bit past Lindbergh. Accident, though, southbound 270 south of Olive, causing delays. Out west, 64 moderate volume at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. 70 looks better. It's a better choice out of downtown. Some moderate volume here and there. Southbound 170, a little slow, too, at 64. Eastbound 6440 slowing on either side of 170. 55 slowing right around Bates as you head into the twisty part of the construction zone. And things look good if you're headed into Illinois on the bridges downtown. I'm Sue Thomas. That's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Sue, I want you to look at our clock right now. because I have my phone.
Oh my
I'm
gosh, it's
videotaping it.
possessed.
So we've got these issues with the clocks, right? And I have a digital clock that wasn't working, and now it's working. And the manual clock that's right in front of me is now just winding on its own.
Backwards.
Backwards, right. So time is moving backwards. I have no idea what's coming. Oh, my goodness. That's crazy. All right, we got an audio cut of the day coming up here in just a couple of minutes. This is actually a really, really big and important night at the Missouri Athletic Club in the West location in particular, because this is the Meet the Charities night, and there are people that are gathering right now to get together with folks from great children's charities here in the St. Louis area. So every year, the Charitable Society for Children takes on 3 different groups and raises a lot of money thanks to the generosity of members at the Missouri Athletic Club. So right now, you got folks gathering out west at the location at Manchester and 270, meeting Books for Newborns, Joshua's Great Things Foundation, and Missouri's Kids. So if you registered for that, you're going to meet those charities. You're going to be particularly inspired to give money and do a lot of generous things here in the St. Louis area. This is what we do at the Missouri Athletic Club. And of course, you have all the fun stuff that happens with membership as well. The other event that I want to mention is on February 25th, in a couple of weeks downtown, the new Federal Reserve Chair from here in St. Louis, the president and CEO of the Fed Bank, Alberto Muslim, is going to speak on that day at the downtown location. Make a reservation for that. That should be a big day. You can always find out more at mac-stl.org for the Missouri Athletic Club. All right, I got to get a little behind here, so I got to get right to this.
Playback ready.
Now, the audio cut of the day.
Oh, I had so much to choose from, but it was an interesting day on Capitol Hill because Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was taking a lot of fire from Democrats, including Maxine Waters and this woman, Congressman Beatty.
Is this going to be a yes or no?
Program award.
Mr. Secretary. No. I'm going to abide by the chairman's rules, but I have some rules. You can say yes or no, and then if you say yes, you may continue to give that support. If it's a no, then you tell me why not. And now we need to be clear. Yes, let's start with the yes or no. I'm trying to be respectful.
All right, so she's going to go down some options here. This is Joyce Beatty of Ohio.
But you're not going to do what you want to do on my time. Yes or no, or you can say I'm not going to answer it. Now move on.
Number 3.
Okay, so let the record show that he refuses to answer a question. No, we're not going to do that with me. We are not going to do that with me.
Ask it. It's the gentlewoman's time from Ohio.
Now, you opted for number 3, so you get to hear my wrath that you refuse to answer a question under your authority and what this administration, and yet you've talked about the value of housing, and you're not releasing the funds, and I want the record to be clear on that.
So that was one exchange, but I mean, this turned into like shouting matches.
It was a yes or no. It was a yes or no answer. I asked him, will he? No, was yes or no?
Recognizes the gentleman.
Stop covering for the president.
Stop. Sue, just another day in Washington, D.C., and there's your audio cut of the day. We're back tomorrow at 3.
Well, if you are southbound on 55, it's looking a little bit better right now. Down at Bates, eastbound 40 still slow on either side of 170. Westbound, just some moderate volume at Clayton Skaker. Things are quiet through North County, and we look good on the Illinois side and on the bridges headed there. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
I want to guide you into some great legal representation. I hope you don't need it because it's with a family practice attorney, and that typically means the end of a marriage. But it's beyond that as well. It's because things can happen in the aftermath of divorce where you might need Susan L. Ward and her services here with STL Family Law, which has been around for several decades with a ton of experience. And they deal with everything related to family law, child support, child custody. You know, you get into grandparent visitation, paternity disputes, relocating of children. When I was divorced in Wisconsin, I moved back here when my kids came back to St. Louis, and I definitely had to be here. I had to do new parenting plan. You need an attorney for that. So Susan can help you with all of that. She's got a brand new office, pretty new. They moved in last May at 270 in Manchester in De Pere. And one of the things that she'll tell you, and you can find this on the website at stlfamilylaw.com, if you need help in this particular area of the law, ask questions now. Don't put them off. You're going to make mistakes that could come back to haunt you. You don't want that. She's going to prevent you from doing it. STLFamilyLaw.com, the focus on family law, the emphasis on you, Susan L. Ward.